YouTube channel, the planetary headquarters for all of your celestial information. You know me, Deadrick Baker, ex-Debake the Wise on Instagram, joined by my brothers Magma Sloth, Tyler, and Taylor. Take kill it, take chill it. We out here unraveling the cosmic mysteries every Sunday. Tune in live, you get the Forbidden Scrolls live, where we get to digest all of the gnarly, mysterious, and forbidden scrolls. All the stuff you shouldn't be reading, and all the stuff you should be reading, and cross-correlating the two. Welcome back to all the regular subscribers. If you are not a subscriber, I'm not going to tell you to press the button yet, but I guarantee you by the end of this video, you're going to be eager to get, you're going to want 3 buttons to press. You're going to press through the freaking screen. So I'm excited to do it today. This is going to be fun. We're talking about the story of Adam and Eve, a story that everybody knows. It's in the Bible. I was raised a Catholic, so I know the story very well. Even if you're not a Catholic, if you're a Christian, I don't want to say Jew, but a Jew. Why is that word so bad nowadays? If you're
don't say that word.
Yeah, right.
If you're a Pentecostal,
subscribe to Judaism, if you're a Muslim, or if you're a Christian and Catholic, you guys know the Adam and Eve story. And even if you don't believe in any of those, you know the Adam and Eve story. So there's a lot of mysteries, a lot of nuances, and a lot of contradictions, things that actually don't make sense within this story. And that's why we decided to do this podcast today. We want to shed some light on all of these little mystery nuggets. And hopefully when we open up that Happy Meal, we'll get a toy inside there too. So dive into this with us. This is the Urantia book. We read it all the time. We consider it one of the standards for cosmic philosophy. And it is the highest, most detailed classification of extraterrestrial races known to mankind. That's why we love it so much. And it's the Forbidden Scrolls. We read what they tell you not to read. If they say, oh, no, that's crazy. Oh, it's talking about aliens. Everybody else runs away. Guess what? You get closer. So that's why we hold it so dearly at heart. Before we dive in, I do want to remind the viewers that I did just drop a music video. Go check it out. It is on the YouTube channel. Worked hard on it. I wrote the song, directed it, lit it, helped with my brother Magma Sloth, so go check it out. I haven't even mentioned it on any of our episodes yet. I just kind of dropped it and didn't say anything. But go check it out. Give it a like. Give it a comment. Talk about some spiritual concepts, infusing them with hip hop. The Legacy Foundation for Human Progress is all about you hitting your potential, and we believe that creativity is one of the best conduits for your personality to actualize, for you to actually taste and grasp onto your personality potential. I express my creativity through making music, making short films. I'm making a short film right now. I got this bad boy, actually. I'm going to do it. I'm going to take a little, I want to show the people.
Let's see it.
If you didn't know, this little bad boy right here, little DJI running 4D.
Oh,
Want to check it out? That's what we're filming on. Filming the short film on that, and also making the music video for one of my tracks we filmed last night on Beale Street. It was pretty tight. Everybody kept photobombing, dude. Trying to walk down in the middle of a big crowd. Everybody, what are you guys filming? It was pretty sick. It's a little flex for the people right there. But all I'm saying is that creativity is one of the superb and supreme aspects of self-actualization. Creating things. God is a creator. So, and we're supposed to be like God, seek God. So if he's a creator, then we should create. And that's one of the best ways you can harmonize and develop the mind, body, spirit. So that's what I'm talking about. Go check out my music. I hope it inspires you to do more with your life and to seek different avenues, just like Leonardo da Vinci. He was a mathematician. He was a geologist. He was a playwright. He was a comic. He was an anatomist. He was an astronomer. He was a chemist. He wasn't just all of these. He was the best at all of these through creative means. And that's what we talk about, the Legacy FHP, Foundation for Human Progress. We want you to progress. So through creative means, you can grow 1% every single day. And by doing that every day of your life, you will hit your potential. So that's why I'm ranting in the beginning right now. I'm just pumped up right now. Had a good sleep. I'm excited because I'm achieving a lot. Yesterday, we got a lot of filming done. So
Okay.
Now we're about to put that cherry on top at the end of the weekend and get my spiritual dose of life. So Adam and Eve, what's up? What's up with these fools? Talk to me. Oh my god, I'm just looking at that thumbnail, that third thumbnail you generated too. It's just
Oh, you saw
hilarious.
that?
Show the
Yeah.
people. Show
Yeah,
the people
I'll
our
pull it up
other
for people. So
iterations.
Alternative thumbnails.
we're trying to come up with some thumbnails here, and we got, the classic Apple, classic white depiction of Eve. We got the old artist, like old woman, a little bit of another angle with the purple skin. It's hard to know exactly what Adam and Eve looked like, although we might get into it later. And then this third one right here, which I thought was the funniest. I really love this whole sad moon angle. And this has got like, those another old art style. She's like, I wanted the bite of this apple. And Adam's mad, and then the angel's just like, oh no.
Yeah, with an arm. Eve's arm is coming out of Adam's rib.
Oh God, you're right.
Adam's got that third arm. I think that's more like Adam's arm, but yeah, I guess it's kind of mixed in there.
That's so hilarious.
Reaching at her with his solar plex.
What Genesis didn't tell you, the moon was alive and was saddened that day.
That part got deteriorated over time when they found the original copy. That one line. No, it just reminds me of like the covers of books from book fairs when I was young. I had to go buy them corny books. Like that's what it looks like. But yeah, Adam and Eve, what's up? You guys got anything to say before we dive into it, or should we just dive in?
Yeah. I got some concepts. Man, the Adam and Eve story. If you wonder what story shapes your worldview, more than anything else, or not your specific worldview, but think about a majority of religious-minded people all across the planet. Now, obviously, we recognize the Abrahamic. There's other non-Abrahamic religions. They have different origin stories that do not include Adam and Eve. But take the three primary Abrahamic religions. Islam, Judaism, Christianity. I actually don't personally know what Islam has to say about Adam and Eve. That would actually be an interesting episode or segment to go over. But, we know those are all Abrahamic, so they might have some cross links. But we know, Christianity and Judaism, I'm familiar with. So obviously, Adam and Eve's story comes from Genesis, this ancient text that's been preserved through, the Judaic line, the Israelites. And this story is not just an origin story. It's also about the sort of like the purpose that man was created for, man and woman were created for, and it tells about why there's evil in the world. It gives it explaining backstory of why we see evil in the world today. And, it does that through what it calls the fall of man, the fall of Adam and Eve. Because obviously there's a premise that like God doesn't create anything bad, but he does create beings with free will. And so when we in the modern world look at how much sort of free will and evil and selfishness there is, obviously we're like, okay. And I think the Israelites probably had the same perspective, when they saw how difficult life was, and they looked back to an idea of why would God create such a difficult planet, a difficult world? Well, the origin story supported that. It answered that existential question. And, the story in Genesis is that there was everything was created good, and then Adam and Eve sort of made it bad by choosing the tree of the knowledge of the fruit of good and evil, which obviously there's, people wonder, was this a literal tree? There's obviously a metaphor in there. We're not sure how much is literal, but there's 100% a moral lesson because God tells them how to live, the parameters of right living, and then he tells them, do not eat from that tree, and that's what Eve does in the story. So what today we want to unpack is what Genesis didn't tell you. What exactly was that tree? Because it doesn't make sense that it was a physical tree, because like the laws of God and right living, they are not arbitrary. Take what Jesus taught about it's your heart that matters. Jesus taught lessons where if, the law used to say, do not murder. He taught, do not hate, because, that's really the premise. That's the thought premise of murder. You hate, and you hate, and then you eventually kill. So if you look at kind of that perspective on the Genesis story, it's like it's got to be more than just a physical fruit or something. So that's kind of my premise. That's what I want to throw out there. Genesis is a summary. It's a very summarized version of maybe some true factual events and also some metaphorical teachings that were passed on through the story. Absolutely. That's for sure. And we don't know how long ago this was. So there's mystery to it. And we're gonna get into the sort of unrevealed story. So Tyler, any thoughts on this? Throw it over to you.
Yeah, that very existential question of why are things so difficult on this world? This is kind of touched on in this story because it's I think the common conception of the Adam and Eve story is that you basically pin the blame on Eve. She was a bad girl. She wanted the knowledge of good and evil, and it's like a Pandora's box kind of situation. But what we'll end up learning through this kind of expanded narrative is their plans were thwarted and they were deliberately being kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Misdirected every step of the way as a result of the Lucifer Rebellion. Which, if you haven't seen the Lucifer Rebellion episode, check it out. Uh, got a very good cinematic episode on that. But on any normal world following God's plan, his whole kind of divine providence for how life is supposed to develop on a world, um, things run relatively smoothly. Obviously, like savage human animal barbarians, rising out of the caveman era, we're always going to be pretty brutal, but it's still kind of a fast track to gradually learning and developing, building civilization. Um, but on our world, things are different because of that rebellion. And not only was the entire initial plan of setting us up thwarted, it's kind of been deliberately halted and stifled as well. And so that's what Adam and Eve were up against. And you'll get to learn a little bit more about that tree and that apple and what might have actually happened in that faithful time period.
For sure. No, I dig that you mentioned the Lucifer Rebellion, because that's really another big angle that, we all know about it being in the story of Adam and Eve in the form of the serpent, which is, even that is a weird depiction of like an angelic being who has rebelled against God and is in the garden. Like, why do they depict it as like a serpent? And then God's punishment is that the serpent can't walk on its four legs and it must like slither on its belly.
Yeah, I've heard
Like
that.
that's weird. We don't see. I mean, it's not obvious that pops up in too many other places. There is like the, seraphim. The word seraph, I think, means burning serpent. So there is somewhat of a
Ooh.
connection with the idea of serpent and angelic beings. But even that is a mystery. Is like, why is this serpent in the garden already? And that's a story. That's a whole nother unrevealed story that we have some episodes on. And yes, you should definitely check out the Lucifer Rebellion, because there's a lot of moving parts to this that contributed to Adam and Eve's fall, and it actually makes a lot more sense when you hear the untold story.
I've got a little something about the serpent. Uh, why I don't know when, at what point in time that symbolism would have been encoded into the Adam and Eve story, but with it existing in the Hebrew Bible, in the Old Testament, and Genesis, we know it's ancient. It was put together by these Hebrew scholars a long, long time ago, passed down. But this story could just about be the oldest story told by humans. And so a lot could have changed throughout that transmission. But the serpent symbolism is one of the oldest forms of symbolism in ancient traditions. And it has its origins all the way back to our early evolutionary history, our primal fear of snakes. I mean, like identifying a threat, it's usually going to be like a wildcat or a snake or something like that can lunge out at you and you don't notice it until it's almost too late. And so identifying Lucifer with the serpent kind of makes sense because it kind of sneaks up on you, you know? He's a little deceptive, then he's
Yeah. Yeah, no, I definitely hear that. That's yeah, that's probably a contributor. What exactly was the ancient depiction of serpents? I mean, there is like, what do you have? The serpent comes up in the Moses story where he's battling the black
oh
magicians,
yeah.
and there's like this whole serpent thing. You know, Moses turns his staff into a serpent. Um, there's in when the Jews and Israelites are in the desert, there's like I forget, there's some sickness that happens, or maybe people are getting bitten by snakes, and then Moses creates a like snake symbol on a rod, and he like hangs it, he puts it up in the center of the camp, and then anyone who looks at it is healed or something. That's another kind of serpent thing
Hmm.
that pops up. But definitely a whole nother angle and metaphor in ancient history to kind of open up. But yeah, I don't know.
Dude,
D-Bake, you got anything?
just because they're from Egypt doesn't mean they're black magicians. You have to make this racial. Haha. Zinger, got him. Um, all right, what up? You want, you want to
They're
Yeah,
keep
let's
reading?
racially diverse magicians.
You know me, I'm gonna make those jokes, people. You know me. All right, I'll start it off. Paper 75, The Default of Adam and Eve. After more than 100 years of effort on Urantia, Adam was able to see very little progress outside the garden. The world at large did not seem to be improving much. The realization of race betterment appeared to be a long way off, and the situation seemed so desperate as to demand something for relief not embraced in the original plans. At least, that is what often passed through Adam's mind, and he so expressed himself many times to Eve. Adam and his mate were loyal, but they were isolated from their kind, and they were sorely distressed by the sorry plight of their world. So they're already, first paragraph opens up. If you, like we said, if you haven't seen part 1 and part 2 of the Adam and Eve story, go check out them live streams because we break it down heavy. When they first land, you know, when their bodies materialize, and then when they appeared to the local humans of Earth. We went over all that, so go read that. And then this paper opens up. Boom, right in the beginning. Adam and Eve were so distraught by how backwards our planet was that already through their minds they were like, we need to do something that was not in the original plans. It was such a bad situation down here because they came to Earth with specific plans. You must land. You will not mate with the local population. You will have 500 generations of children, and then your great, great, great 500th grandchild down in generation, they will mate with the local population. And that's the actual plan on normal planets. Adam and Eve were like, this planet's fucked up, dog. We got to hurry this up. Maybe we should not wait for the 500 generations. I'm doing a little foreshadowing. I'm not going to give you the entire story right now, but it's already passing through their minds. The Urantia problem. The Adamic mission on experimental, rebellion-seared, and isolated Urantia was a formidable undertaking, and the material son and daughter early became aware of the difficulty and complexity of their planetary assignment. Nevertheless, they courageously set about the task of solving their manifold problems. But when they addressed themselves to the all-important work of eliminating the defects and degenerates from among the human strains, they were quite dismayed. They could see no way out of the dilemma, and they could not take counsel with their superiors on either Jerusalem or Edentia. Here they were, isolated, and day by day confronted with some new and complicated tangle, some problem that seemed to be unsolvable. Under normal conditions, the first work of a planetary Adam and Eve would be the coordination and blending of the races. But on Urantia, such a project seemed just about hopeless for the races, while biologically fit, had never been purged of their retarded and defective strains.
Ooh.
Damn. Let's pause right there and
Wow.
just address the elephant in the room. The Urantia book, by far the highest standard. I don't have to repeat myself. I already said it in the beginning. one of the highest standard textbooks for cosmic philosophy on planet. You Google it, and you will find heat. That's why this channel's awesome, because I'm black. You will find heat. The Urantia book has a lot of criticisms that it floats racist concepts or uses terminology that seems non-PC, non-politically correct, or insensitive, if that makes
It's
sense.
antiquated. Antiquated term.
Yeah, remember this book was written from 1911 to 1933. Supposedly that's the frame where we got the paper. And back then they were talking way different. I'm not giving them a pass, but you know, they were talking differently. This is a fact. You can read the books from back in the day. You can even read William Sadler's books. They'll fucking give you wide eyes. The same guy who stumbled upon the sleeping subject and gave us the Urantia book, read his text. He's gonna make you fucking be like, holy shit. There's, they use the term Negro, all this shit. Not in the Urantia book. Do they? I'm not sure. I don't think they do. But
No, there's one thing they say, like the Negroid race and the Caucasoid and the Mongoloid,
yeah, those are like
those just
early
words they
1900s
used.
terms. Yeah, early 1900s terms. And this could strike a nerve when they say that while we are biologically fit, we had never purged ourselves of our retarded and defective strains. Yeah, they use the
Pretty
word
brutal.
retarded and defective and strains, and people don't like looking at certain humans as inferior. We don't do that nowadays. I get it. We do. We don't. But objectively speaking, you can look at Group A versus Group B. And if Group A picks berries faster than Group B, objectively speaking, you would say, okay, that group is a little bit more advanced. If Group A starts to build civilization while Group B doesn't even get better at picking berries and doesn't even try to build huts, you would say, yeah, Group A is a little bit more advanced. And why is Group B not progressing? Because they didn't rid themselves of their slow-minded and non-hardworking strains. Is that a better way to say it? Or retarded and defective strains. I don't know how you want to call it. If you're just like looking at it as from like a petri dish, like a scientist from the top down, you could observe data and put it on a board and be like, Group A does this, Group B doesn't do this. Why? And you would be able to pick out individuals who probably are leading groups of people who are lazy or who are stimulating them to work. And that's the difference between Group A and Group B. It's saying that we should be focused on that. I'm not like trying to be like eugenics or like a call to Nazi arms, but we should have these concepts in the forefronts of our minds, How do we advance the race, and how do we stop creating people or teaching people correctly so that they don't become the slowest man in the convoy, if that makes sense?
It's a good point. It's worth
And we're
considering
not
that.
talking about colors. We're not talking about skin color.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's not about an entire race being completely superior to another race, which unfortunately that ideology like 150 years ago was rampant. Well, actually, all throughout human history, but
Still is today for a lot of people.
kind of. But you think about that. That's one thing that always kind of uh kind of surprised me reading the Urantia book was this kind of cold scientific perspective of the human race as if we are in a petri dish. But think about it from the perspective of the life carriers being these beings who have planted life on a world. Um, they really got one shot at doing that. They cultivate and nurture the life over millions and millions of years. It narrowly escapes extinction on several occasions, and they manage to just really cultivate that flame carefully, get life to proliferate. Now they have an advanced animal that's standing upright, and it's like everything's on the line. I can see why they would probably be kind of banking on like we got to streamline this, get these humans to a stable point of like uh, a light and life civilization, like just a point of stability ASAP before they extinguish themselves. And I think that's why they're geared on uh, this concept of like race betterment, I guess.
My,
But
Go ahead, finish your
I
thought.
was just going to say one important point about that is diversity is necessary for that. If you look at like all the races on Earth, all the peoples that had advanced the fastest, it was very largely because of their strategic location, having access to resources, but also being in the trade routes along with other peoples, being able to whether it was having the threat of another people that encouraged warfare and military action, or the opportunity of barter and exchange with another people, it would encourage development and innovation. But it's always the isolated peoples that basically stagnate. And so uh, that's really, I think, that controversial use of the word retarded there. It's really using the word literally as slowing down, you know? There's strains of culture that kind of slow down the entire convoy. Um, and it is pretty brutal to consider early humans wiping each other out and all that. Uh, Obviously, once we get to this point in our development, we are, we're all indwelt with thought adjuster after Pentecost and all that. We're a lot more civilized. So that kind of stuff shouldn't be on the table, you know? And it still kind of
Yeah.
happens some points on the planet, which is pretty wild.
Jump in here and kind of try and summarize it. We have, we're talking about a difficult concept, but like one I want to put out there, this is 37,000 years ago. So again, get in your mind the primitive humans.
This is 37,000 years ago.
Our current scientific record has like these different generations of humans. What's the other names? Throw them out there. I'm blanking, but I know you guys are more familiar. When we say caveman, what are the official names?
Like Neanderthal,
Yeah, Neanderthal.
Homo erectus, Homo floresiensis, Homo dionysus that they just found. They found the Java man. They're finding new ones in the past 2 years, like Hobbit man.
Yeah. So throw that on the table. Primitive man. We discover a lot of different really types, and even that Neanderthal image is in I think a lot of people's mind.
Dionysus.
Okay.
Sorry.
Dionysus, the Greek god of wine. Think of Neanderthal. Often people relate that to cavemen, and there's a question of like these are different stages of humanity. So try and think of it in that terms, different stages of humanity, and genetics does play a factor into the growth of civilization. And there's also like in those early ages when everything is survivalism, that's also part of our animal origin. And so as our genetics get better as an entire planetary population, we actually start to think deeper about life, and we can connect more to our spirituality and the arts. And once we stabilize, our resources, getting food, moving out of the nomadic hunter relationship into agriculture, all that stuff takes like real smarts, and a big part of that smarts, is the genetic, I guess, growth, of the planetary population. So when Adam and Eve and the spiritual divine government is working on a planet, they want to increase our inheritance, and so they have a lot of programs, and partly, the quotes that you see in this book kind of point to their sort of top level down program of improving genetics for the entire planet. So, like Deadrick and Tyler said, there's not like one race better than another. It's like there's the primitive man, and then there's supposed to be, after the Adamic race increases the genetics by integrating with all the populations, then that's post-Adamic man. And we did not get that full increase of genetics because of the fall of Adam and Eve, and that's what this paper is about. So I want to try and put it like that. And also I just saw an interesting story. the biggest modern day talk about, gene editing is this CRISPR technology. We are actively using
Yep.
CRISPR to improve genetics. So
You hear the new story that came out?
yes, that's what I want to mention here. So this is like just this year, they used CRISPR gene editing to treat a living baby. Like they didn't do this while the baby was an embryo in the womb. This is like a living infant that they were injecting a CRISPR gene editing sort of technology or medicine in, and it was combating something, I guess, that looks like it's called CPS1, carbamoyl phosphate synthesase, a metabolic condition that impairs the body's ability to eliminate ammonia, leading to toxic accumulation. It says, this summary here says that this happens 1 in 1.3 million infants, and without intervention, it often results in death. And so this was treated using this new gene editing technology. So I just want to throw that out there as a perfect modern day example of how critical gene editing sort of improvements are sort of giving life to conditions that pop up. And so remember, we're trying to fight the negative, I guess, possibilities of genetics to inhibit your potential to grow. And, these medicines are part of that process. There's also the natural process of how all the races progress in total genetics. But we're acknowledging through this kind of side tangent here that whenever humans try and make these decisions themselves about whose genetics are better than the other, we get into what is known as the race wars, and it's often very evil. So we're not suggesting that humans sort of start making decisions about which genetics live and die. These decisions were supposed to be made by these superhuman beings, which much more intelligence and ethics than humans. And that was Adam and Eve. That was part of their project. So that's all I have to say about these quotes that pop up.
All good points. And we're going to address this topic more on the channel when it has to come with like race in the Urantia book. Spoiler alert, the Urantia book says in the end, it's going to be a fully blended race. Okay. It's going to be like a bronze olive shade, they say. And that would have already happened if Adam and Eve didn't default. We'd already be pretty much blended by now. So it'd be more strife in between the races. And that's just how it's going to be. The master race is the fully blended race. Okay. The master race isn't blonde hair, blue eyed, not that Nazi shit. But we'll get into it more later. Plowing ahead, Adam and Eve found themselves on a sphere wholly unprepared for the proclamation of the brotherhood of man. A world groping about in abject spiritual darkness and cursed with confusion worse confounded by the miscarriage of the mission of the preceding administration. Mind and morals were at a low level. And instead of beginning the task of effecting religious unity, they must begin all anew the work of converting the inhabitants to the most simple forms of religious belief. Instead of finding one language ready for adoption, they were confronted by the worldwide confusion of hundreds upon hundreds of local dialects. No atom of the planetary service was ever set down on a more difficult world. The obstacles seem insuperable and the problems beyond creature solution. So that's pretty gnarly. It's saying right there that no Adam and Eve was ever placed down on a world that's crazier than Urantia. And for the viewers out there, Adam and Eve were the second celestials to land. The first celestials were the Anunnaki of the Sumerian. Everybody knows about the Anunnaki. We call him Prince Calagastia and his staff members. That's what Anunnaki means. Anu and Naki. Anu means heavenly sky prince or sky father. And then the Naki is the prince's staff, the heavenly staff. So the Anunnaki means the sky prince Anu and his staff members. So the Anunnaki were the first to land. And when they land, they were supposed to already have gotten everybody on like a unified religious front and one language. what was it, like 460,000 years in between Anunnaki landing and Adam and Eve landing. So I mean, they had 500,000 years to make this happen. I think they could have made it happen, but instead the Anunnaki rebelled against the universal government, and they said, free for all, we're going to do our own plan. We're just going to see survival of the fittest and watch the struggle play out. It's kind of fucked up. That's why we have the planet the way it is currently. But this paragraph is painting a picture in our minds, saying that when Adam and Eve landed, keep in mind the Anunnaki had landed 500,000 years before them. And when Adam and Eve normally land, the world all is speaking the same tongue, and they all actually have a form of religion. When Adam landed, there was hundreds of dialects, go from tribe to another tribe speaking different languages. And on top of that, they didn't even have simple forms of religious belief. How are you supposed to teach them about the cosmic government if there's still like eating snails and like, you know, naked and rubbing dirt on their butts and like worshiping the fucking bark branch gods? Like, they're not even worshiping the bark branch gods. They don't know there's a bark branch god. They're just eating the fucking bark off the branches. Like, how are you going to work with these people? They should have already been developed to a certain point. And it almost makes me think like, damn, are Adam and Eve like little brats? Do they need to have the planet perfect when they land? You can't work with a hard planet? Come on, Adam. No, but you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, no. Well, so it's interesting because in an earlier paper, it talks about how Adam and Eve, you know, the place that they came from, all of their friends went to normal planets where everything was set
Yeah.
up correctly. And, you know, they're having their time. They're developing their planet. And Adam and Eve are like, they get to their planet and they're like, nobody did the homework. Like, now we got to do everything.
Exactly.
And it's like super difficult. But I think that's part of it, is that like all the other Adam and Eves were trained where there was a 500,000 year period where there was a staff that took the primitive tribal civilizations and at least built like a worldwide beginning of a worldwide civilization. So yeah, I mean, they sort of like, I don't know, what's the example? It's like you hire an assistant to do like a post grad project or something, and your assistant like doesn't do any of the pre-work, and now you have to get like grunt now you have to do like a bunch of grunt work, and that's what they're
Yeah,
kind of facing.
that's hilarious. Yeah, exactly. And like they couldn't hit up the other Adam and Eves because the communication circuits were severed. So tripping. Okay, they were isolated, and the tremendous sense of loneliness which bore down upon them was all the more heightened by the early departure of the Melchizedek receivers. Only indirectly, by means of the angelic orders, could they communicate with any being off planet. There you go, addressing what we were just talking about. Slowly, their courage weakened, their spirits drooped, and sometimes their faith almost faltered. And this is the true picture of the consternation of these two noble souls as they pondered the tasks which confronted them. They were both keenly aware of the enormous undertaking involved in the execution of their planetary assignments. Probably no material sons of Nebadon were ever faced with such a difficult and seemingly hopeless task as confronted Adam and Eve in the sorry plight of Urantia. But they would have sometime met with success had they been more far-seeing and patient. Both of them, especially Eve, were altogether too impatient. They were not willing to settle down to the long, long endurance test. They wanted to see some immediate results, and they did. But the results thus secured proved most disastrous to both themselves and to their world. Ooh. Bum, bum, bum. Nice little intro right there, giving us a little setting the scene for what they're dealing with. Got a fucked up planet. Calagastia fucked it up. That's the next part right there. Calagastia plot.
A snake
And
in the
what's
garden.
cool, snake in the garden, baby, legit. That's where we get the term snake in the garden. And well, this Marvel action movie, the thriller of Anunnaki versus Adam and Eve. Remember, Anunnaki, Calagastia, they're still on the planet. At least Anu is. I think the Naki, the staff, are dead by now. But Anu's still on the planet. Calagastia can go around and still talk to humans, and he was plotting against Adam and Eve. So that's part of the reason why the default happened.
Yeah, should I pick it up?
Yeah, I don't know where Magma went. I think
I'm
I
back.
abducted him.
I've returned. Doing some dogs.
All right.
Doing some what?
Some
You're
stuff
making
with the
hot dogs?
dogs.
Oh, let's say send me one.
Tending to my doggies. What do we make it to? The Temptation of Eve?
Calagastia.
All right. 2. Calagastia's plot. This is where the story gets. Calagastia paid frequent visits to the garden and held many conferences with Adam and Eve, but they were adamant to all his suggestions of compromise and shortcut adventures. They had before them enough of the results of rebellion to produce effective immunity against all such insinuating proposals. Even the young offspring of Adam were uninfluenced by the overtures of Dalagast, and of course neither Calagastia nor his associate had power to influence any individual against his will, much less to persuade the children of Adam to do wrong. It must be remembered that Calagastia was still the titular planetary prince of Urantia, a misguided but nevertheless high son of the local universe. He was not finally deposed until the times of Christ Michael on Urantia, but the fallen prince was persistent and determined. He soon gave up working on Adam and decided to try a wily flank attack on Eve. Try a wily flank attack. Can I just ask real quick, what is that word?
Wily. That's an old school term. Like he's wily. He's like a
like Wile E. Coyote?
finally, like wiry, like a scrapper. You're kind of skinny, but you're you know.
Calagastia.
Clever, crafty, skilled at gaining an advantage, especially by using deceit or trickery.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the way the snake is described in Genesis. I think they have that tone for sure.
Sneaky. Or Lee brought up recently Loki and the not the freaking Marvel Loki, but she's been looking into Viking Norse mythology and all that, and Loki's basically Lucifer. He's like a crafty, conniving, persuasive, charming, trickster kind of character. All right. The evil one concluded that the only hope for success lay in the adroit employment. This is pulling out all the vocabulary stops. I'm sorry, I gotta look that up. Adroit. I can't get through the Urantia book without a thesaurus on hand because I want to learn these words. Adroit means skillful, clever, and resourceful in handling situations. All right, learn a new word. The evil one concluded that the only hope for success lay in the adroit employment of suitable persons belonging to the upper strata of the Nodite group, the descendants of his one-time corporeal staff associates, and the plans were accordingly laid for entrapping the mother of the violet race. It was farthest from Eve's intention ever to do anything which would militate against Adam's plans or jeopardize their planetary trust. Knowing the tendency of woman to look upon immediate results rather than to plan far-sightedly for a more remote effect, the Melchizedeks, before departing, had especially enjoined Eve as to the peculiar dangers besetting their isolated position on the planet, and had in particular warned her never to stray from the side of her mate, that is, to attempt no personal or secret methods furthering their mutual understanding. Eve had most scrupulously carried out these instructions for more than 100 years, and it did not occur to her that any danger would attach to the increasingly private and confidential visits she was enjoying with a certain Nodite leader named Sarapotesia. The whole affair developed so gradually and naturally that she was taken unawares. The garden dwellers had been in contact with the Nodites since the early days of Eden. From these mixed descendants of the defaulting members of Calagastia's staff, they had received much valuable help and cooperation, and through them the Edenic regime was now to meet its complete undoing and final overthrow. Dang.
Right, I'm
Not
up
looking
here
good.
next. I was actually looking up the name meaning of Sarapotesia because it's kind of interesting. It's got the first 5 letters of seraph, which is seraphim. I think that's a seraph in it of itself is relating to
A snake.
like a serpent. And so this word that they chose to name this person, the Nodite leader Sarapotesia, it almost cross correlates with, that snake idea in the Bible is almost like there's Calagastia, the being that's trying to convince Eve to not follow the normal plan of integrating with the human population. And then there's also this Nodite leader, Sarapotesia. So yeah, I was just kind of looking that kind of word up to understand why that name was kind of given.
It's funny. Those are probably like playful names. Like,
Yeah.
you know, when a kid's like lazy, you'd be like, call him like lazy Osho over here. You know, like
Yeah.
he embodies the feeling of laziness. So like Surreptatia, we're gonna give him a name that embodies
Surreptitious.
that old snake-like feeling. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And so, yes, the Sarah, Seraph, and then the word pot could stem from pater, meaning
Oh.
father. So, the father of
The father of the snake-like
the
humans
father
in
of the
Urantia.
snake. I don't know, the line of the snake lineage, which is not like a literal. It's not that the genetics were evil or something. It's that the snake, the idea, Calagastia's idea was, well, I don't want to spoil it, but Calagastia's idea was, yeah, I won't spoil it because we're about to get into it here.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's actually a really good breakdown. That's interesting. Like the father of the
Father of the snake lineage.
I like
Yeah.
that. Another play on words here. Surreptitious means kept secret, especially because it would not be
Oh,
approved of.
there. Yeah,
That's
surreptitious. That makes
a
Oh,
sense.
perfect fit.
Okay.
That's closer. I think that's even closer to the meaning that they're getting to,
Yeah.
because it has more of the word Sarapotetious. Yeah, for sure. You got it.
That's
You win.
hilarious.
Nice.
And I love the sentence that says, knowing the tendency of women to look upon immediate results rather than plan farsightedly for more remote effects. Zing.
And
Sorry to all the ladies out there. No, I'm just kidding. That was
Oh,
a funny one.
I just got to throw in just a funny little short. I'd seen the other day this couple's getting ready, and the guy asked his wife how much longer. She's like, "Oh, I'll be a while doing my hair." So he turns on his PlayStation 5, and it makes the teet noise turning on. She's like, "All right, I'm ready," because she hears that noise. So then later, like they're gonna take the kid out or something. She's like doing something. She's like, "Oh, I'll be a while." So he turns it on right when she hears that noise. She comes right out. So they're doing something later, like she's ordering food, trying to decide what to do. They're in the restaurant, and he has his PlayStation, and he like turns on the noise, and she instantly decides what she wants. So it shows all these scenes where he starts leveraging his PlayStation to get her to make a decision. But I thought it was funny because it's that whole thing, like she's not going to let him turn that on when she's trying to go. But you know what I'm saying?
I saw that video. Yeah.
You saw that video? That's
Yeah,
funny.
I've seen it.
If you get it, you get it.
All right. The temptation of Eve. Dun dun dun. Here we go. Adam had just finished his first 100 years on Earth when Sarapotesia, upon the death of his father, came to the leadership of the Western or Syrian Confederation of the Nodite tribes. Sarapotesia was a brown-tinted man, a brilliant descendant of the one-time chief of the Dalmatia Commission on Health, mated with one of the master female minds of the blue race in those distant days. All down through the ages, this line had held authority and wielded a great influence among the Western Nodite tribes. So I want to point out
That's
here
crazy.
that
He was mixed, hybrid.
yeah, and that's a perfect example of how some of these sort of cosmic origin beings were thinking. They were like, let's take the most brilliant from this tribe and mate them with the most brilliant from this tribe because the resulting child will become a great leader. And that's like a positive way to think about, I think, this genetics idea rather than the twisted way, which is we think those people are bad and we are better, therefore we kill all those people. That's like that's not the solution. So
Exactly. You're touching. I talk about this a lot, and we're not here really to talk about sex motive or the motive to mate or the motive to be in a relationship. But what you're talking about, that underlying energy, I think is the secret to creating a better race. I don't want to say eugenics, I'm holding back from it, but that's like the proper eugenics program. Is it's like that when Adam and Eve first landed, all the surrounding tribes, it was the highest honor if you earned the eye of an Adamic chick. Like if I was so good at what I did and an Adamic chick looked at me and she's like, oh, I kind of like him. It was the biggest badge of honor for me. Same with females of the human race. If they got the eye of an Adamic guy, it was a big deal. And that makes it so everybody in that tribe is now trying to be the best they can be in order to earn the right to have a relationship with somebody who's also brilliant from another tribe. And if we just did that regularly in society, I think that would be the best. Unfortunately, we're really vain right now. It's whoever like has diamonds around their neck, whoever's driving a Ferrari, um, whoever just looks good. Vanity, like I think I like him because he's cute, but he's a lazy motherfucker and really likes to manipulate everybody in his life. Those values that we made over are stupid. We need to actually be mating over the values we were just talking about being a progressive person. It's like on social media, hot small chick likes this big athlete guy. That's just because of looks and shit and because of money. But instead, it should be like the person who is designing their own anti-grav also has their own workout program and has a creative endeavor. They should be mating with a female who's also doing something similar to that, not just because they're hot and look cool in Ferraris, if that makes sense. So just the values that we are basing our entire relationship, male female integration on, should be a little bit higher. It should be trying to be the best you can be so you can earn another partner who's also killing it. Like if I was with you guys and we saw like a group of girls over there, I'm just saying, like, hypothetically speaking, in this perfect reality, and they're killing it, rocket scientists, freaking track stars, soccer players, and they're not even focused on guys. They just want to hit their potential. And they're not giving any guy the time of day unless he's on their level. Guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to make sure I'm on that level so they give me the time of day, And that should be I think the proper way eugenics should be set up, as opposed to like what you say, Taylor, like they're dark skinned or they do this. I don't like them. Let's kill them or not mate with them and look down upon them. No, it should just be like find the most brilliant out of these groups and keep bringing them together, baby.
That's a really good point. What you're talking about, race betterment, that's more the idea I think that the Urantia book, the authors had in mind when they're talking about this. Keep in mind, this concept of eugenics, that word has pretty much been forever stained because of the history that would unfold throughout the late 30s and the 40s in World War II and Nazi Germany and all that. And what we know about the early eugenics program in America, the way it was implemented was totally corrupt, really backwards. But that initial concept of race betterment, that eugenics, the race hygiene, it was supposed to be originally geared towards kind of a mind, body, spirit development kind of thing, and it was very perverted and corrupted. But I think when this book was introduced, keep in mind this was before World War II. This was 1911 to 1930. But I think it was trying to take that concept, eugenics, and try to redirect it and set it off in a better direction, possibly to prevent something like that. And I don't think it was ever intended to be something like what would end up developing through like a fascist state kind of situation where you have a corrupt power controlling an entire state of people and trying to exterminate another entire like ethnic group. I think that the more appropriate way of viewing this concern of like race hygiene is looking at the movie Idiocracy, which actually kind of reframes it without ever using the word eugenics, but it reframes that rational fear of what happens when you have the worst of the population overpopulating for the wrong reasons. And you can see that in that movie if you've seen Idiocracy. You got the really intelligent couple, they're saving their eggs for later, later down the line when you didn't cultivate the best of the best, you basically end up running civilization into the rocks. And so what we have today, and they didn't have a word for this back then, is epigenetics. And Taylor, you were touching on this earlier with the CRISPR technology and stuff. But epigenetics is just uh, when you have a family that so it's this idea that through your behavior and lifestyle, you'll affect your children you have genetically. Just the your own DNA, you can actually reprogram it in your life. That's a real thing. Because you got to think those cells are replicating so fast and so rapidly. The genetic mutations can happen kind of on the fly over the course of months if you're living a better lifestyle. So you may not have diabetes, but you can develop diabetes in your life and have a kid that inherits diabetes. And this applies with all kinds of mental and physical disorders. Likewise, you can prevent that through living and eating right. Um, and so that is actually the more positive redirection of racial improvement. And it doesn't have to do with what we think of as different races, because what we think of as like skin color and different races, they're just different flavors of the anatomically modern human. We got the same brain, the same heart. It's more the cultural values you have in a family. You know, if you got like an abusive father who's a real piece of dirt, he raises his kid like that, that kid's going to grow up really troubled and kind of inherit a lot of really complicated values. Whereas if you really nurture, foster your kid's intelligence, your kid can grow up to be more intelligent than you. So uh, that's really the solution to this problem: mind, body, spirit, progress.
Hell yeah. You can be part of the legacy of humankind. The legacy of starlight upon planet Earth. You could be part of it. Join up today. And I am noticing something funny right now. Only got 3 likes on the video. If you can, if you're watching this right now, don't be afraid to swipe your thumb over that like button and just hit it. Get us to that front page. That'll help a lot. That's why we created the YouTube channel, so that we can get mind, body, spirit development. The true organization, the true brotherhood and sisterhood of man upon the face of planet Earth. So you could help with that by hitting the like button and hitting that subscribe button. If you're watching this and you are currently not subscribed and you like what we're saying, or what we're saying is just making you pull your hair out and you're like, I can't believe these guys are perverting the Adam and Eve story, and you want to go send it to your Christian buddies, that's fine. Just hit that subscribe button first so you're staying up to date, so that you know exactly what to battle in the arena of thought forms. No, but I mean, I doubt anybody's really doing that. Hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and oh, look at that. Everybody just hit the like button like that. Thanks. Appreciate it. Went from 3 to 6. Thank you. Appreciate that. And check out the freaking shirts. We got some shirts going out. Magma's wearing it right now. We got the Legacy logo on the front, and we also have versions with the Legacy blasted across the chest. That is our contribution to society. It is your contribution to, it's actually more of our contribution to swag-tacular and your contribution to mind, body, spirit development for the brothers and sisters. And together we can look fresh and we can take the planet back from the Illuminati high priests. Like Taychilla said, we're only making $9 profit. The shirts are $30. And we're trying to get this mind, body, spirit app in everybody's pocket. You know how much it costs to develop an app? Yeah, we're talking in the thousands, guys. So $9, it's going to crank away at that goal. So if you could, go check out the shirts. The links are in the description. Every time you buy a shirt, we sacrifice an Illuminati high priest. We got it on video. Join the Patreon. We'll show you the videos. No, we're having fun here. Go check it out. Go check out the shirts. Legacy FHP. If you want to be part of the legacy of light on planet Earth, buy a shirt. Take a picture of you with the shirt and put it in the Discord server, and we got something special coming your way. Tell your friends about us. Let them know that the revolution is not televised. It's being streamed, dog, right here.
And you know what? Like the video, even if you don't like what we're saying, you got to like the fact that we're talking about it, because someone's got to talk about this stuff. Ain't no one else talking about it.
Exactly. We're not going to figure it out by not talking about it. So let's have the conversation.
All right.
And I think it's all you.
I'm still reading. Yeah, I only got through one paragraph, and then we did a TEDx talk. We're all jumping in.
But it is kind of crazy. So he's a descendant of, so the Anunnaki staff member that is his descendant was the leader of health. And the Anunnaki were holding celestial DNA plus Andon's DNA. So they look like an Eskimo. like an Inuit person. So but super Inuit, super jacked celestial Inuit. He mated with one of the master female minds of the blue race. And then that's where Sarapotesia got his lineage from. So he's a hybrid. He has, I guess, Anunnaki blood and just Sangic blood.
Probably a
And
handsome
now
dude.
he's, yeah, handsome dude, brown tinted man. You know, look at me. Hey, no, I'm just kidding.
Probably looked like Deadrick. That's what we're trying to
Exactly,
say.
yeah, no.
Remake playing Sarapotesia.
Shit, the genetics don't lie, dog. Urantia the movie.
Okay, Sarapotesia had made several visits
I'd
to the
rather be
garden.
Kano.
Sarapotesia had made several visits to the garden and had become deeply impressed with the righteousness of Adam's cause. And shortly after assuming the leadership of the Syrian Nodites, he announced his intention of establishing an affiliation with the work of Adam and Eve in a garden. The majority of his people joined him in this program, and Adam was cheered by the news that the most powerful and most intelligent of all the neighboring tribes had swung over almost bodily to the support of the program for world improvement. It was decided. Oh, the cadence I read that was a little awkward. Sorry, let me go back. The majority of his people joined him in this program, and Adam was cheered by the news that the most powerful and most intelligent of all the neighboring tribes had swung over almost bodily to the support of the program for world improvement. It was decidedly heartening. And shortly after this great event, Sarapotesia and his new staff were entertained by Adam and Eve in their own home. Sarapotesia became one of the most able and efficient of all Adam's lieutenants. He was entirely honest and thoroughly sincere in all of his activities. He was never conscious, even later on, that he was being used as a circumstantial tool of the wily Calagastia. Presently, Sarapotesia became the associate chairman of the Edenic Commission on Tribal Relations, and many plans were laid for the more vigorous prosecution of the work of winning the remote tribes to the cause of the garden. He held many conferences with Adam and Eve, especially with Eve, and they talked over many plans for improving their methods. One day, during a talk with Eve, it occurred to Sarapotesia that it would be very helpful if, while awaiting the recruiting of large members of the violet race, something that could be done in the meantime immediately to advance the needy, waiting tribes. Sarapotesia contended that if the Nodites, as the most progressive and cooperative race, could have a leader born to them of part origin in the violet stock, it would constitute a powerful tie binding these peoples more closely to the garden. And all of this was soberly and honestly considered to be for the good of the world, since this child, to be reared and educated in the garden, would exert a great influence for good over his father's people. It should again be emphasized that Sarapotesia was altogether honest and wholly sincere in all that he proposed. He never once suspected that he was playing into the hands of Calagastia and Calagastia. Sarapotesia was entirely loyal to the plan of building up a strong reserve of the violet race before attempting the worldwide upstepping of the confused peoples of Urantia. But this would require hundreds of years to consummate, and he was impatient. He wanted to see some immediate results, something in his own lifetime. He made it clear to Eve that Adam was oftentimes discouraged by the little that had been accomplished toward uplifting the world.
This is cool. This is giving you like more of an image of the background, the setting of what's happening. So like we know the staff, the Anunnaki, rebelled, and they were living in the surrounding tribes around the garden, and Adam and Eve landed, and they're like, holy shit, this planet's fucking crazy. But the Anunnaki, the Urantia book calls their descendants, when they mated with humans, when the sons of God went into the daughters of men and bore the mighty men of old. Was that what it was in Genesis? When that was happening, these Nodites, even though they were defaulted and rebellious, they had the highest amount of celestial blood. So they were still advanced, even though they rebelled. These tribes still had advanced celestial blood, and they were getting taught directly by celestials. Now Adam and Eve land, and they see the planet. It's all fucked up. God damn, fuck. but they do see this tribe of Nodites that they're like, oh, those are the rebellious people that we heard about. We kind of don't want to fuck with them. It's kind of sketchy. Do we mix with them or not? And then all of a sudden, the biggest group of these Nodites that you sketch out about, their leader pledges their allegiance to you. And that must have been a huge win. They're, oh my God, finally, the people who rebelled, who were supposed to do their duty, they're coming back, and they want to help us. So if the planet's already fucked up, and we're having a hard time. If we confederate and solidify this bond, we'll have a bigger group to finish the mission. So I think that's the main point they were doing. I don't think they were trying to have sex to start procreating the Adamic race early. I think they were just trying to create that single hybrid baby to bond the Nodites and the Adamites, hopefully as one group, so that they can further achieve the planetary uplifting plan. So that's just trying to recognize the nuance in the story and understanding the set and the settings, because even my own mind, sometimes I tend to run off of the concept of, oh, Eve wanted to start the biological upliftment early. It seems like that wasn't the case. It was more of just creating that tying the Nodites
an alliance
to the Adamites, an alliance.
Yeah, it says
Very good
that was
point.
uplifting to them to get one of the great leaders, the Nodites, to their cause. But in neither Adam and Eve's mind at the start of this were they like thinking of integrating the biologic, like having kids between the Nodites and the Adamites, because for the viewers, something that we read in the early papers is that Adam and Eve were only supposed to have kids with each other, and their kids were supposed to have like this. The first line of kids would be mated with each other. It sounds weird, but at that point, it wouldn't cause genetic problems. That's only later down the line or in the primitive human tribes, because Adam and Eve have a sort of cosmic DNA pattern. And they were supposed to do that. Earlier, D-Bake said 500 generations. I think the technical number is about 500,000.
500,000 generations.
I think 500,000 people. That's the
people,
population
okay, yeah.
that the Adamites were supposed to get to, pure line Adamites, and then they were supposed to take the Adamic people and then start integrating and intermarrying with the rest of the tribes. And all along that time, creating that 500,000 population of Adamic species, they were also teaching the tribes. They were bringing them to the Eden city, the Eden garden, and they were teaching them and sending them back out. So creating a culture, a spiritual and material culture as well. And they're having a really hard time because the Lucifer Rebellion had affected our planet. And they made this alliance with the Nodites, Sarapotesia, the line of, you might think in your head, you might think, oh, the Nephilim race, but like the Nephilim were not inherently evil, but it was a specific genetic strain from the sons of God, which were actually physical beings with a cosmic DNA. They weren't angelic beings. And that's another really great explanation that makes a lot of the mystery in Genesis make sense. So, the Nodites were, for lack of a better term, the Nodites were the lineage of the Nephilim, and they were powerful, mighty men of old. And so that's the alliance. That's what we're seeing here. Adam and Eve and the Anunnaki's descendants from a long time. A lot of hundreds of thousands of years have gone by since that happened.
Yeah, and we do got a chat from R.C. Smith. Great point. If the Nodites were more advanced than the Sengics, could not their premature admixture with Sengics have been predatory? That's the joke I make all the time. It is kind of weird that these billion-year-old cosmic beings are flying around and manifesting bodies just so they can have sex with 20-year-old, 25-year-old beings. It is kind of weird. It does seem predatory in a weird way. But yeah, I mean, I would have to say yes, predatory. I mean, the Anunnaki rebelled straight up. Right when they rebelled, didn't Calagastia order them all to go mate with the local tribes directly?
Oh yeah,
And
they weren't supposed to do that. That's
They
right.
weren't supposed to do that. Yeah, so it was predatory. Yeah, like, ooh, she's hot. She's only 25. I'm 13 billion. Let's go. Like, fuck. Kind of weird.
Kind of.
People giving Bill Belichick heat right now because he's 79, has like a 25-year-old wife.
Oh my God, I know.
You guys hear about that?
Yeah.
He's just doing the Adamic, the Anunnaki method, guys. It's okay.
Hey, I got money. I've got resources.
Right. Yeah, to not to
Illuminati.
confuse the Adamic method. The Adamic method was that they marry around 18, or that's when they get betrothed, and then there's like a 2-year training period, I think, of marriage, sort of
Marriage
like
training.
preparation, and then in the early
Don't
20s they'd be married and start having kids. Um, but yeah, the Anunnaki did it way different. They were supposed to not have kids with the native population.
They did
And when
anyway.
they did, it created a really big power dynamic that also caused problems because, um, and this story is told in in the Book of Enoch a bit, when the Watchers and everything, that they taught advanced knowledge, and they also had
Mm,
this Nephilim powerful genetic race, mixed between man and God, the sons of God.
yeah.
And yeah, I imagine there was often, I guess you could say, the Nephilim could overpower the native human species. So who knows what the wars may have looked like, um,
Oh
during those
yeah.
times, the Nodites
Ooh,
expanding
yeah.
out and taking land and area, and what that would have looked like. So there was a lot of problems that happened from that. And that was like 200,000 years ago, because that's when the Lucifer Rebellion happened. And then 37,000 years ago, Adam and Eve arrive, and the original sons of God that mated daughters of men, those original 100 are dead by now, but their progeny live, their line of descendants live, and some of the ideas of the rebellion have propagated a bit into that lineage. And also Calagastia is still there to influence the serpent in the garden, and all of this is coinciding with what we're reading here. And that is why this backstory starts to unfold this really big sort of cosmic tapestry of lost history on Earth, which is why this book is so valuable. And, a lot of, I find it strange, like, all these mysteries revealed about things mentioned in the Bible. Why aren't the Christians interested? Why don't they read this and go, oh my God, it all makes sense? Um, I don't know. There's a certain percentage of curious people that do kind of look into it and can see the connection, but I think a lot of the
Just clicks.
surface level mainstream religionists kind of just, they don't even know how deep the Old Testament goes. They haven't even looked at that. They're not curious enough. And so they don't see the connection. All they see is, they see a different version of the story that seems like so out there, but it's like, sorry to burst your bubble. Even the the Jewish Israelite scribes who wrote the story, even they understood a context way larger than you think happened in Genesis. And that's where
Yep.
you got to dive into the original text. Check out Michael Heiser's work. He unfolds something pretty revolutionary in the theologians' world. They're like, oh my word, it was here the whole time. The divine council,
Mm,
the Nephilim story, like all of this connects with a larger worldview that they had when they wrote the Bible. Now you don't have that worldview, but that doesn't mean that wasn't the intention of the Bible when it was written. So
mm.
you're reading from your modern literalist point of view, and you're missing out on the contextual sort of evidence of things that were really happening. And now this comes along, this claims to be a revelation. This book has new stuff. So, like, there's a lot of, I'm just telling you, like, you gotta, if you want to be killer mind body spirit, you got to step up your game. You got to really be curious. And if you're here watching this, we assume that you're one of those people, so congrats. We're gonna continue reading.
Hell yeah.
Awesome.
And riffing off what you're talking about, the Nephilim and how the Anunnaki weren't supposed to mate with the local population. They created the mighty men of old. That's where we get the Sumerian and Egyptian kings lists from.
Mm,
Those are all the
mm-hmm.
descendants from those people. Just trying to connect some dots for the viewers. And you also spawned another thought in my mind, like the greatest stories ever told. And I'm a filmmaker. Chilla Magma. We're all part of the same production team. We will have some IMAX movies before we die, so keep an eye out for them. When you see them, you'll be like, "Damn, I used to watch these guys live stream, and now they're out here making movies." But it's gonna be sick.
Yep.
So we're thinking of, like, Anunnaki, the prince's staff, and then they rebel. So not only do they get wives when they're not supposed to get wives, and these are like let's say, billion-year-old celestials, hundreds of thousand-year-old celestials, million-year-old celestials. We don't know their ages, but I'm sure could be in the hundred thousands, millions, if not billions. And when they land, they start doing war on the tribes around them as well. I'm sure some of these were over females. Obviously, humans. But like, I wonder if there is ever a time where they lost, where like these billion-year-old angels went to battle with the wrong tribe of cavemen who have been killing people for 500,000 years, and like what those epic battles were like if there was a tribe that was strong enough to conquer the Anunnaki, because they're just savages, they could like tackle a horse and fucking take it down.
I'm sure there's some heroic moments of the primitive humans battling and getting some small wins on the Anunnaki lineage, but overall, I would say they lost, or they were not. They won. Yeah. But I'm sure there's some heroic stories in between there. Some 300, 300, they all die, but it's still lit.
Still heroic, exactly. Yeah.
All right. Okay, so I think we just finished paragraph 6 there. For more than 5 years, these plans were secretly matured. At last, they had developed to the point where Eve consented to have a secret conference with Kano, the most brilliant mind and active leader of the nearby colony of friendly Nodites. Kano was very sympathetic with the Adamic regime. In fact, he was the sincere spiritual leader of those neighboring Nodites who favored friendly relations with the garden. The fateful meeting occurred during the twilight hours of the autumn evening, not far from the home of Adam. Eve had never before met the beautiful and enthusiastic Kano, and he was a magnificent specimen of the survival of the superior physique and outstanding intellect of his remote progenitors of the prince's staff. And Kano also thoroughly believed in the righteousness of the Sarapotesia project. Outside of the garden, multiple mating was a common practice.
Oh, so it didn't even phase these guys. It was like,
yeah, they didn't see it as like a wrong thing. Yeah. And we see that in the Bible too. They do that kind of stuff. It doesn't say that it's like the best like divine method per se, but it's pointing out that it was common accepted practice for the native peoples. So
it wouldn't have even been weird to them. It wasn't like
no, the Mormons, it was weird for the Adams though.
People still practice this.
Yeah, the Adamites. I don't think there's anything that suggests that they were practicing this. Although I don't know how later down the line, Adam's son and his kids.
It seems like they threw that out the window.
Yeah.
It happened here, so I don't know. I'm wondering though. I don't think that was taught that way for them to continue that, because it talks about how the Adam and Eve's kids, were like married by the age of 20, and they would have kids that way. But who knows, what happened there too. So. All right. Influenced by flattery, enthusiasm, and great personal persuasion, Eve then and there consented to embark upon the much-discussed enterprise, to add her own little scheme of world-saving to the larger and more far-reaching divine plan. Before she quite realized what was transpiring, the fatal step had been taken. It was done.
So they were flirting. He swept her off her feet, I guess.
Yeah.
He was influencing the flattery and just pumped up, laughing, and right then and there, she made the decision.
Yeah. So I mean, let's kind of pause here, because we opened this up about the secret. What was the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, the forbidden fruit? Was it an apple? Right here is your answer. Without saying it in any sort of crude mannerisms, it just told you what happened. Eve consented to have a kid with Kano, one of the Nodite tribe members. And the reason this was wrong was that Adam and Eve had previously agreed to the divine mission established and utilized on all the other inhabited planets in the universe. It's been working for millions, billions of years. It's a program, and it's they've already tested this process, and it's been decided, and they agreed to this. We're just going to have the Adamite pure line descendants till we get 500,000, and then we're going to start mating with the human population. This is how we integrate with the planet. That's the plan. And so when they step out of that plan and did it their own way, they lose support of the cosmic government. So that's it. That's the secret. And people have actually speculated something similar to this before. I've heard it said before, oh, was the tree of the knowledge of good and evil sex? And that doesn't fully make sense, because another one of God's commands is to be fruitful and multiply. So it's not like sex in and of itself between Adam and Eve was forbidden. But their connections, the symbolism, like people have always wondered, like, is that part of it? And yes, it actually is part of it. Eve consented to have sex and have for the purpose of having a child with one of the tribesmen, outside of the garden. And that was it. That's the secret.
And like, it probably made it a lot easier that he was cute and they got along,
Yeah, I mean,
like,
5 years. It took 5 years for her to make that decision, and
Yeah.
I don't think Kano was talking to her for 5 years, but at the end she was like, "All right, let's do it. I've thought about it, and I think it's really going to help." And that's
It's like,
yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah, you think about it for 4 years and you're like, I don't know. It's not a good idea. And then you see this hottie walk around the corner and you're like, fuck it.
it's like the main
Just
characters
enough.
of the main characters of any movie. If you've seen those pitch meeting videos, is like, why are they making out right now? Because they're attractive. That's just what happens.
It just all right. The realization of defaults. The celestial life of the planet was astir. Adam recognized that something was wrong, and he asked Eve to come inside with him in the garden. And now, for the first time, Adam heard the entire story of the long-nourished plan for accelerating world improvement by operating simultaneously in two directions: the prosecution of the divine plan concomitantly with the execution of the Sarapotesia enterprise. And as the material son and daughter thus communed in the moonlit garden, the voice in the garden reproved them for disobedience. And that voice was none other than my own announcement to the Edenic pair that they had transgressed the garden covenant, that they had disobeyed the instructions of the Melchizedeks, and that they had defaulted in the execution of their oaths of trust to the sovereign of the universe. So right there, it reveals the celestial being that gave us this paper was the voice of the garden who banished Adam and Eve. In the Bible, the flaming sword, the seraphim, the voice of the garden, banishes Adam and Eve, and they realize they're naked. That being that was there is the person who gave us this paper. So this is the most reliable information you're going to get about the Adam and Eve story. If you're going to believe it from somebody, you might as well believe it from the angel who was attending and overwatching and saw the story firsthand. That's why we're placing so much emphasis on this right now. Her name is Salonia, so thank you, Salonia. She says it at the end. So Eve had consented to participate in the practice of good and evil. Good is the carrying out of the divine plans. Sin is a deliberate transgression of the divine will. Evil is the misadaptation of plans and the maladjustment of techniques, resulting in universe disharmony and planetary confusion. Very important paragraph right there. It's delineating the difference between good, evil, and sin. Sin, you don't know. You're not really conscious of it. Oh no, sin is the deliberate transgression. Evil is the misadaptation. So evil is you're not that conscious of it, In normal society, I think we kind of take evil as worse than sin, but the Urantia book flips that and says sin is worse than evil.
And I like how it says there that they consented to participate in the practice of good and evil, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. That's what the tree is symbolically representing. They were like,
they wanted
okay,
knowledge of that.
We're gonna do the divine plan, and we're also gonna do our own plan. the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Eve did this, and Adam did this in full knowledge of both the good and the evil, unapproved method that they agreed not to do. That is the meaning of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil.
That's a good connection right there. And that's in Genesis right there.
Mhm.
They're mixing good and evil. What did Jesus say? He said, don't put new wine in old wineskins. Same shit. Don't mix the good and the evil. Don't practice them both.
I don't think that's what Jesus was saying with that quote, but because the new wine and old wine, but they thought they had a new wine idea and that they could mix it with the old wine, I guess is kind of your correlation. But that's
yeah.
Jesus is saying the good, the new
his,
good, and the old good.
Yeah, I'm using his phrase to address a different mental concept that you can still be used for. But you're right. Jesus was saying, don't mix Old Testament teachings with New Testament teachings. All that bull crap that you guys learn about sacrifice, don't mix it with this. But I'm just using that phrase to paint a picture of don't mix old and good together, or good and bad,
good and evil. That's why I kind of thought it seemed a little bit different. So,
okay, it's kind of like that Bible quote about being lukewarm, where it's like, so then because you are lukewarm and neither hot nor cold, I will spit you out of my mouth. And it's this idea that like you're either hot for God or you're cold, and you're like leaving God out of the picture. But if you're lukewarm, you're kind of mixing, you're kind of in the middle. That's not good enough. You need to be on fire for God's plan.
Yeah, get spat out. Yeah.
I think that was Paul.
Hell yeah, look at that.
That's Revelation. Yeah, that is in Revelation. Interesting. Yeah. Because you are neither lukewarm, neither hot and cold, I am about to spit you out of my mouth. It's talking about the end days, the judgment, stuff like that.
Beware, guys. Good, evil, and sin. Hopefully we're connecting some of them dots for you. Hopefully, if you're a Christian or you read the Bible or grew up on the Bible stories, this is going to fill in some of them mental gaps. Every time the garden pair had partaken of the fruit of the tree of life, they had been warned by the archangel custodian to refrain from yielding to the suggestions of Calagastia to combine good and evil. They had been thus admonished, in the day that you commingle good and evil, you shall surely become as mortals of the realm. You shall surely die. Eve had told Cano of this oft-repeated warning on the fateful occasion of their secret meeting. But Cano, not knowing the import or significance of such admonitions, had assured her that men and women with good motives and true intentions could not do evil, that she should surely not die, but rather live anew in the person of their offspring, who would grow up to bless and stabilize the world. Yeah, that's retarded. Sorry, guys. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. That's a dangerous way to think. Just because you have good motives and good intentions, you could do no evil. Yeah, tell that to the people who throw like cans of soup on the Mona Lisa. You know what I'm saying? Like all these protesters who, I think I have good intention. That's the most dangerous type of person. Something like, or the ISIS terrorists. They think they're doing it for Allah.
I was literally about to bring up ISIS. So last night I went down a little research rabbit hole before I went to bed. I was looking at some ancient art, and there's this one site. I think it was the Temple of Nimrod or something, and it was one of the most well-preserved, like megalithic sites of Mesopotamian culture. Is where you get that depiction of the guy holding the handbag and all that. And ISIS in 2015 bulldozed the entire site because their prophet had told them to basically demolish any blasphemous sites where you're worshiping false gods, and that was how they interpreted that. So they had, in their mind, good intentions. They weren't worshiping Allah at that site. So demolish the whole thing. Now those wonderful archaeological records are lost to this.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, Eve should have been like, "Shut up, Kano. That doesn't make any sense." But I guess she was so hot. She was like, "It's okay."
Notice the wording here as well also relates to something in Genesis. The snake tells Eve, "Oh no, surely you will not die. You will know then
Oh
you will know the
yeah,
knowledge that God is trying to
you'll
hide from
never
you.
die.
But it was actually here,
Yeah.
Kano is saying, no, surely you won't die, but rather live anew in the person of our offspring who will grow up and bless the world.
So Kano is the serpent.
Well, no, we have three different characters I think we want to recognize: Calagastia,
Okay,
Sarapotesia, and Kano.
And
They all
Kano.
have
they've been
quotes which
condensed.
get condensed, which have
Into
gotten
the
condensed
serpent.
into the serpent.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's funny how Devil, Calagastia, and Satan is the dragon. A lot of reptilian references.
Yeah. You know, I could picture that happening over thousands and thousands of years of telling this story over and over. There's probably certain points where the different characters, the distinction between them wasn't clear. So you're telling that story as you remember it being told when you were a little kid. Now you're old and you're telling that story and you're like, I don't really remember who some of those characters were. So I'll just say the serpent. Let's go with that. You know, after that story's been told so many times, it just happened.
Yeah, and I guess there's a question of who taught, did that story live on through oral tradition, or was it resurrected by someone like Moses or a prophetic character who actually kind of, I don't know, had a vision or was part of a lineage that did know the story? But no matter
Yeah.
what, your point is correct. Is that the full story was getting condensed over time somehow, and that's why Genesis looks like a summary. You know, it could say a lot more about what's happening, but it's summarizing, you know, events and trying to paint a bit of a worldview and tell us about why the world is like it is.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of the Bible is like that. Like just condensing multiple stories and using one word for divergent themes in order to just kind of like get a point across. I mean, that just happens lost in translation over thousands of years. Alrighty. Even though this project of modifying the divine plan had been conceived and executed with entire sincerity and with only the highest motives concerning the welfare of the world, it constituted evil because it represented the wrong way to achieve righteous ends, because it departed from the right way, the divine plan. True, Eve had found Kano pleasant to the eyes, and she realized all that her seducer promised by way of new and increased knowledge of human affairs and quickened understanding of human nature as supplemental to the comprehension of the Adamic nature. Wow. I talked to the father and mother of the violet race that night in the garden as became my duty under the sorrowful circumstances. I listened fully to the recital of all that led up to the default of Mother Eve and gave both of them advice and counsel concerning the immediate situation. Some of this advice they followed, some they disregarded. This conference appears in your records as the Lord God calling to Adam and Eve in the garden and asking, "Where are you?" It was the practice of later generations to attribute everything unusual and extraordinary, whether natural or spiritual, directly to the personal intervention of the gods.
Wow. Okay, so an important point to make here in this last paragraph, the author is speaking about like I was there, you know, as if I, the author, was there. Keep in mind at the bottom of this paper it says presented by Solonia, the seraphic voice in the garden. So
Yep.
that's what's special about this paper. If it's real, it was presented by a seraphic being that was actually there, and this much further in time is actually getting us caught up to clarify what actually happened. What Genesis
Right to the
didn't tell
source,
you.
baby. Right to the source. Legacy FHP, finger on the pulse. That's what I'm talking about. What Taychilla masterfully pointed out before, Salonia is literally going through the main points of our Genesis Adam and Eve story and addressing everyone and using the words that we have. She keeps doing it. Every paragraph is like addressing a different point. Again, right there in the quotes. In our Bible, it says like they wanted increased knowledge, right? Like knowledge to be like God. But they clarified it here. In reality, they were trying to gain new and increased knowledge of human affairs and quicken understanding of human natures and like intertribal relations. You know, by having this kid, they would gain more knowledge on how to further the plan on Urantia. So that it wasn't really like people think that she was trying to eat this and like have all the knowledge of God. All of a sudden, her mind would be unlocked and she would have access to all this like infinite intelligence. But in reality, they clarify it right there. She was just looking for quicker knowledge in order to expedite the process of planetary upliftment through the Adamic regime and the Nodite regime. Interesting. Fuck yeah, y'all want to keep going? I'm gonna get some water real quick.
Yeah, about
Right.
1 hour 40 minutes. Is it me? Am I up? Or
I'm
Magma?
you're up?
I think
Magma?
yeah.
Yeah.
I'll take this on and pass. 5. Repercussions of default. Eve's disillusionment was truly pathetic. Adam discerned the whole predicament and, while heartbroken and dejected, entertained only pity and sympathy for his erring mate. It was in the despair of the realization of failure that Adam, the day after Eve's misstep, sought out Leota, the brilliant Nodite woman who was head of the Western schools of the garden, and with premeditation committed the folly of Eve. But do not misunderstand, Adam was not beguiled. He knew exactly what he was about. He deliberately chose to share the fate of Eve. He loved his mate with a supermortal affection, and the thought of the possibility of a lonely vigil on Urantia without her was more than he could endure. When they learned about what happened to Eve, the infuriated inhabitants of the garden became unmanageable. They declared war on the nearby Nodite settlement. They swept out through the gates of Eden and down upon these unprepared people, utterly destroying them. Not a man, woman, or child was spared. And Cano, the father of Cain, yet unborn, also perished. Upon the realization of what had happened, Sarapotesia was overcome with consternation and beside himself with fear and remorse. The next day, he drowned himself in the great river. Damn. The children of Adam sought to comfort their distracted mother, while their father wandered in solitude for 30 days. At the end of that time, judgment asserted itself, and Adam returned to his home and began to plan for their future course of action. The consequences of the follies of misguided parents are so often shared by their innocent children. The upright and noble sons and daughters of Adam and Eve were overwhelmed by the inexplicable sorrow of the unbelievable tragedy which had been so suddenly and so ruthlessly thrust upon them. Not in 50 years did the older of these children recover from the sorrow and sadness of those tragic days, especially the terror of that period of 30 days during which their father was absent from the home, while their distracted mother was in complete ignorance of his whereabouts or fate. And those same 30 days were as long as years of sorrow and suffering to Eve. Never did this noble soul fully recover from the effects of that excruciating period of mental suffering and spiritual sorrow. No feature of their subsequent deprivations and material hardships ever began to compare in Eve's memory with those terrible days and awful nights of loneliness and unbearable uncertainty. She learned of the rash act of Sarapotesia and did not know whether her mate had in sorrow destroyed himself or had been removed from the world in retribution for her misstep. And when Adam returned, Eve experienced a satisfaction of joy and gratitude that never was affected by their long and difficult life partnership of toiling service. Time passed, but Adam was not certain of the nature of their offense until 70 days after the default of Eve, when the Melchizedek receivers returned to Urantia and assumed jurisdiction over world affairs. And then he knew they had failed. But still more trouble was brewing. The news of the annihilation of the Nodite settlement near Eden was now slow in reaching the home tribes of Sarapotesia to the north, and presently a great host was assembling to march on the garden. And this was the beginning of a long and bitter warfare between the Adamites and the Nodites. For these hostilities kept up long after Adam and his followers immigrated to the second garden in the Euphrates Valley. There was intense and lasting enmity between that man and the woman, between his seed and her seed. And that last bit was a quote. I'm not sure where that quote was from.
Yeah, that quote
But
is from the
wow,
Bible.
somewhere in the Bible, yeah. It doesn't come to my memory exactly where, but that's wild. That shows how catastrophic an upheaval that can cause by straying off such a carefully prepared plan. And I mean, there was a reason for this plan. It wasn't an arbitrary do what I say, or else. It was things. We have to treat this with prudence. We have to treat this entire plan with caution in how we choose to approach it, who we choose to integrate with, and just the way word got out of what had happened, and the way the barbarians reacted and overreacted. Being the primal humans they are, we did kind of evolve from primates. We're like, get in rampage mode and start destroying everything. That's what happened. And man, that was ravaging. And then seeing what had happened, the inhabitants of Eden kind of, there goes my camera again. The inhabitants of Eden kind of going out.
He's still there? I can't hear you, Magma.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I heard you right there. Keep talking.
Good. So I can only imagine, after just having experienced that all-out warfare, everything fell apart, just fell right through your fingers. And now your husband's walked out on you for an entire month. He's gone. That is complete and utter defeat in mental anguish. That would probably be the hardest part, is you're not even able to really go over, like, to get over what had just happened. You're just stuck there, I guess, with your kids and with all the aftermath. Just like, what do I even do? That's an entire month of hopelessness. Pretty brutal.
Yeah, absolutely. If your camera still has issues, maybe you can do the restarting Discord, because that seemed to work last time. Because I just heard your audio was doing that thing during that little portion there.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Is it a live stream without a fucking mid break for technical?
Oh, it's just a part of it.
Yeah. So
That's what I bring to the table, is technical difficulty.
I think it's your computer, even
My
though you got
forte.
that big graphics card. I don't know. It seems to happen, at least an hour in. But what I want to point out here is that we kind of skipped over this. But okay, in the story, Eve takes a bite of the fruit first, and then she gives it to Adam, and then he takes a bite. Now, what's actually being said here, like we said, the physical fact of the event that happened was not a biting of fruit. It was straying from the divine plan. Eve had a kid with Kano, one of the native population. And then when Adam found out about Eve's misstep, he knew that they would now be losing the support of the cosmic government, because he knew that Eve went against the agreement. And so Adam, in his fear of being separated from Eve, it says here, he sought out Leota, the brilliant Nodite woman who was head of the Western schools of the garden. He found her to have a kid, or have sex with her and have a kid, in order that he would share the same fate as Eve. So that's kind of heavy, but it does tie together the story. Adam took a bite of the same fruit. He went with the same method. Now, his reasoning was a little bit different. It's almost like heartwarming in a sense. He's like, but it's still not like right. It's like he's sacrificing his own conscious. He knows that what he's doing is against the plan, but he's doing it because he loves his mate with a supermortal affection, and he can't stand, the idea of her being taken away, and he's just on the planet doing the thing. He's like, if she's going to suffer, I'm going to suffer with her. I don't know. That's just, I wanted to point that out. I also, because, we call this live stream is called Eve's Betrayal, but, Adam also consented to the same betrayal of the cosmic government and the cosmic plan. So, it was truly on both of their heads. They shared responsibility, and this is the untold history.
Yeah, did you guys already read that part where Adam?
Goes off for 30
we
days.
finished section 5 there.
Okay. Yeah. So, yeah, that same day, right?
What an eventful
Adam
day.
bounced and found a check.
Yeah.
Another chick. Yeah, he told him, he's like, all right, well, left
Let's
and
do this.
smashed another chick. Yeah.
And
I
it's
wonder how
wild,
much
like
of that was out of spite, if there was even
both
1% in his mind, or was it
both.
purely like, all right, we're biologically uplifting now, screw it. But
Yeah,
you're right there. I'm sure there had to be a little bit of like, really, what the fuck are you serious, dog? All right, well, I've been flirting with this one over here. I've been not trying to do anything, but now it's on, you know. I don't know. I just don't know how it works. I don't know how it works.
Yeah. I mean, the Adamites, they were 15,000 years on Jerusalem. I think that the ideas on Jerusalem, the mental values, probably do not include that type of jealous concept that we have when we look at our modern day relationships and mating protocols and marriage rituals. Yeah. So
yeah.
the angels could just be focusing on the positive aspects of why he did what he did, but maybe there was, a bit of that distorted idea that entered his concepts as well. But from what I get from the quote, it seems that it wasn't necessarily out of spite for Eve, but that to ensure that he would share the same fate. Yeah.
That's what's wild too, is that he still has this immeasurable love for Eve. I mean, they were together for 15,000 years. So he's not just going to drop everything right here and there, wherever she goes, I go. So he's just going to take the fall with her.
Yeah, and it seems like because they're Adam and Eve's, they might be like rich kids, where they don't, not that much consequences really happen to them. They know because they're kind of divine images. It's like me. I know I'm gonna get chewed out sometimes. I don't really go a fuck. I'm gonna do it anyway, because I know the consequences ain't that bad. You're like, we're Adam and Eve's.
They know
All
it's
right,
going to
you
work out.
like exactly. They've been alive for 15,000, 20,000. I mean, 15,000 was just how much they served in Urantia, right? They could have been along for longer than that. They like after that amount of time in the universe, you kind of get over like bodies and shit. Okay, you generated a body and had sex with that person. No big deal. Like you don't get caught up over sex. Sex isn't like a thing you get caught up over because it's just like your physical body you're using for this lifetime and then you discard it. Then you can generate a new body on that planet for this reason. And like sex, I think is less like we conceive it down here. We're like, you're my property, therefore you are only mine, and you don't give that to anybody else. It's probably more like way laid back. I'm not trying to say like the free love hippie movement is correct, but they kind of were kind of like that, like whatever. Everybody sleeps with everybody. We're in a community. She kind of likes him, but she also has a crush on Jim. But she also has a crush on Deadrick. And you know what? Her and Deadrick were having fun that Friday night. But Deadrick was also having fun next Wednesday with Karen, and what's her name went over to whatever for a bit, and now they're all friends, and they still hang out. Like, I'm not saying that's correct, but that's an example of humans who got over that feeling. Extrapolate that on a cosmic scale, not like everybody's fucking each other, but they get over it. They're like, it's not a big deal. It's really not you, it's your body. Like, am I going to get jealous over the body you had on Earth? And then what if you don't look the same when you go to the next planet and you're not attracted to them? Did you really like the person, or were you just attracted to their body? All these different questions start coming up, and I'm sure they advance past that state. So add that concept mixed with the concept of I'm an Adam and Eve. Sky Daddy, the father, is gonna give me a slap on the wrist. So fuck it. If she has sex with it, we'll do it too. No big deal. We're just gonna get back into the cosmic economy and keep ascending. It's not a big deal. We've been alive for 15,000 years. Let's do another 15,000 years. And you're still in the universe. You're, whatever. I'm just gathering up experience. Not a big deal. Slap me on the wrist. Yeah, as long as you don't annihilate me, we're gonna keep going.
Now, with that said, there were real consequences on the line here. I mean, one, obviously everything falling apart for the human race, but also they took an enormous risk by coming down here. From what I recall, they aren't indwelt with thought adjusters, so they don't have that mechanism of being resurrected. So they really could be left here, and this is the place they die, and they're just extinguished from reality. And as far as they know at this point, that's basically their status, and we're about to get to that. But they are basically isolated here with no hope of retrieval. And that may or may not get resolved. I'll leave you on that cliffhanger.
Yeah, and you guys might have talked about this, but yeah, I noticed you guys read this part. So Sarapotesia killed himself. He drowned
Drowned
himself.
himself in the river. Whew.
That's, I mean, if that's not showing you that he was unconscious of what he was doing, and then he realized
Yeah.
what happened after, and that he realized he got used to the point where he committed suicide, he looked up so highly to the Adamic regime. He looked up so highly to the planetary upliftment mission. That was his entire being, and then that gets flipped upside down on its head, and now you realize you're the reason why it all got thrown to the wind. Yeah, that's gnarly. So he went to the river. He's like, fuck this. I don't even deserve to live. I'm a piece of shit. Fucking drown yourself. So it shows you he was a real one. And it's unfortunate for Kano. The Adamites came in and fucking fucked him up. So we've talked about this before. You take that paragraph by meaning it was only the Sangics who lived in the garden that went out and destroyed the Nadites. You don't think it was any Adamites that went out and waged war? Or what do you think there could have been some Adamites that went out and said, fuck this, I'm gonna get my hands a little dirty too?
Maybe, I don't know. They were all tribal people after all, you know?
The reason I would say the Adamites probably did not take part is that we're only like 100 years in, and Adam and Eve are still teaching their kids directly about like how the Adamic culture lives. And later it says that Adam and Eve, they get chased out of the garden by the warring tribes, and they choose to leave because they're not a warring people, the Adamites themselves. So I would tend to assume that it's the tribal inhabitants, the native peoples that have been invited and live in the garden as part of the project, that they're the ones most infuriated, and they're the ones who grew up with war between tribes. So naturally an idea in their head is, they've wronged us greatly, we must go to war, despite Adam and Eve teaching that war is not the method. I think Adam and Eve would have, there could be a sub story in there where one of the kids was so upset that they did. It's a big jump to me to think that one of Adam's kids would be that offended by the situation that they would suddenly go murder, because that's like a major step. To the normal humans, murder and killing in wars, that's like fairly normal, but to the Adams, no, that's not normal. So that's kind of my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, I just, you know me, I got this fetish in my mind of 1 or 2 purple skin guys looking at the, we're going with you. We're fucking going with you.
Oh, dude, if we made a movie, we'd need to have at least one or 2.
That's what it would be. Exactly, yeah. And then tying from what we learned from the last Adam and Eve paper, what we kind of stumbled upon ourselves, or you saw me stumble upon in real time, the way that Abel treated Cain. You know, Abel was a full-blooded Adamite, but he was a dick. He was taunting him constantly, and it shows you that the Adamites aren't really like perfect morality.
They didn't grow up on Jerusalem,
Yeah, and he was a direct descendant of Eve. So yeah, if they had kids and they were raised on Earth, they could, get a little wily, to use their word. Yeah.
I'd love to touch on this last quote on section 5 here, the enmity. There be lasting enmity between that man and the woman, between his seed and her seed, because this is in quotes, because this is in the Bible. So I want to bring up here, because again, like I said earlier, the Christians, this story is revealing what the events happening in Genesis, and so it's important to sort of back up and kind of see where the hints are in Genesis about this. So here's what you should wonder. This should kind of blow your mind here. Here in Genesis 3, this is Genesis 3:14. This is the paragraph called the fall, is Genesis 3. Talks about, this is when, God is in the garden saying, where are you? We just read that was actually Salonia the angel calling to them. But here God is saying, what have you done? The woman says, the serpent deceived me and I ate. And then in Genesis, it's recorded as the Lord God said to the serpent, because you have done this, cursed are you above all livestock, above all beasts of the field. On your belly you shall go, and dust you shall eat all the days of your life. I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and her offspring. He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel. Okay, so first question. God's talking to the serpent in this verse. Why is he saying he's going to put enmity between your offspring and her offspring? The serpent has offspring. The devil has offspring.
Right. Exactly.
That's
right.
the first question that the Christians should be asking.
Good shit. Exactly.
And now I guess they might think, oh, well, maybe the offspring would be the Nephilim. And because that's kind of like the rebellious sons of God, which are on the Luciferian rebellion, sort of having their own lineage, which is true. So, okay, that's one explanation. Oh, that actually ties in with what the Urantia book told us. The Nodites is the Anunnaki of the lineage, the rebellious staff with Calagastia. And so this verse is like literally supporting what is happening in this story. The Satan's physical lineage, the result of the Satan rebellion, was the Nodite tribe from the Anunnaki physical sons of God that were able to procreate with the women of Earth. And now this verse says, enmity between you and the woman, between your offspring and her offspring. This is also another piece of evidence of pre-Adamic civilizations, that Adam and Eve were not the first people, that there was other civilizations. So I just pointing out all these connections here, that like the evidence is there. It's just not 100% clearly explained. Like as a factual story, it's like a summarized, and it gets metaphor, and a couple different characters get condensed into one idea. And now we're unraveling it. So these worlds coincide. They actually explain each other. They do not fight with each other. What we're reading is not heresy, it's revelation. It is revealing to you what actually happened, and it makes a lot of sense. It makes more sense. If you don't think so, I think you're not thinking. I think you're just offended at the idea that there's something other than the Bible with like divine truth or something, or claiming to have a truth, and that's challenging to your background or your worldview, the way you've been taught about revelation. So yeah, I mean, it's so clear there. That's part of why the story was told with these Bible quotes. Is it's trying to remove the distortions from the story of Genesis.
Good point. Getting that clarity through the distorted Bible messages that we have. And you're right. Yeah, that's a great highlight. The enmity between the man and the woman. That man and the woman. They're talking about Adam and Eve. And then
they're
like
talking about the serpent,
that come...
and it says, "I'll put enmity between you and the woman, not that man, not Adam." Oh, I see. In the Urantia book, it says that man.
Yeah, I'm right. Talking about
in the Bible.
Yeah,
it's
I'm reading the
as if
Urantia
the
books.
serpent. Right.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't pull up the Bible quote. I'm just reading from the Urantia book. But when they say
you were
like
saying
that
Adam,
man and the woman,
enmity between Adam and the woman, but it's not Adam. It would be Cano and the Nodites.
Yeah, you could say you could look at it like that. Yeah. I'm just saying like two lineages kind of bifurcated at that point in time, and Eve started that mixed breed, which created Cain. You're right. Adam did obviously create a hybrid as well too, but he also made Abel, right? And that's kind of like where it split off. But you would consider Adam and Eve like the threshold point to where it splits, and that kind of causes enmity, and you see it within Cain and Abel. You see you're hybridized and you're pure blood, when that should be an integration, like Adam or like Eve and Sarapotesia were kind of trying to do. They wanted the Nodites and the Adamites to come back together, but instead there will always forever be enmity between the Nodites and the Adamites.
Yeah.
But you can also take that as Sarapotesia. Whatever.
No, great point. I was just trying to point out that it wasn't talking about enmity between Adam and Eve. I was just trying to define when it says that man. In the Bible, it's as if God is talking to the serpent, but we know now that the serpent is representing 3 different individuals, Calagastia,
Yep.
Sarapotesia, and Kano, which is also representing the Nodite bloodline, which you could tie
Yep.
to the Nephilim.
Yep. Shit, dude. Anunnaki versus Adam and Eve coming to you. Sci-Fi Channel at 1 a.m.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
$500 production budget.
Gaia, soon we're going to be the talking heads on Gaia explaining the Anunnaki versus Adam and Eve story.
Dude, you know they have like talent agents. Don't let them stumble across us, dude.
You said don't
These
let
guys
them?
are perfect. Yeah,
They're gonna
because they're gonna get a hard on, and then we're gonna be like, just double that check, boy.
The negotiations begin. Yeah. Heck, well, again, that's what we're here for. So,
And if you're liking this and you're watching it, hit that like button, baby.
we got some comments. Should we
R.C.
take a
Smith
look?
over here dropping quotes.
Yeah.
It said there exists enmity between the Nodites and the Abaddonites already from 73-1. So that's from the Garden of Eden. That's the paper before. This is 75. He's quoting a paper from 73.
Mm.
So he's just talking about there is already strife because the Anunnaki rebelled. And when the Anunnaki split, they split 60-40. 60 rebelled and 40 stayed positive. And there is beef between he's calling them the Amadonites and the Nodites. I call them the Vanites, whatever, same shit. Vanites, Amadonites. The good staff, the good people. But yeah, there is already war and enmity between those 2 factions.
Yeah, and we have Child of God in the chat saying, I think the enmity is pertaining to sowing the seeds of the soul to the flesh in the Bible, when the masculine and the feminine energies of essence become one and whole. Okay, yeah, that's kind of like an interesting idea there. I guess I'm not fully understanding. So, enmity pertaining to the sowing of the seeds of the soul to the flesh in the
Where do you see
Bible.
this? I don't see that chat.
Yeah, I don't see that
Check
either.
live chat, not top chat. I don't know. Actually, that's weird. It doesn't show up on my iPad, but it's over in my. Maybe I don't know if
What the hell?
if
That's
the chat
so weird.
is deleted.
Okay.
Live chat.
You're right. Live chat. There it is.
Yeah, no, it's in live chat.
Live chat and top chat. I didn't realize there were different tabs.
I didn't even know
there.
you could do that. No, me neither.
Yeah, I don't know how it ranks those, but yeah, I'm just trying to think through that kind of comment here, see if there's any kind of. Honestly, I might have some follow-up questions on how you're kind of seeing it there. The sowing of the seeds of the soul to the flesh. I think that's what I don't really know what you mean by the seeds of the soul to the flesh. I do recognize that, like, when it's talking about enmity, that is like a soul, a mental thing.
Okay. Yeah, he's talking about like the internal
think,
struggle between masculine and feminine.
Yeah.
Okay,
which
is spirit versus the flesh.
Yeah. I guess there was still could be maybe some amount of enmity between the masculine
that's
and
in the
feminine
Bible.
from this.
Yeah, that's a biblical point of view. When I was a pastor, people were talking about that. Like the big battle was the spirit versus the flesh, and that was like somehow tied into the Adam and Eve story. I don't know exactly, but
Oh, I see. Okay, so let's go back to Genesis here. If you read a little bit further, God, after talking to Satan, the serpent, about I will put enmity between you and the woman, between your offspring and her offspring, he turns to the woman and says, I will surely multiply your pain in childbearing. In pain you shall bring forth children. You shall desire, your desire shall be for your husband, and he shall rule over you. So I think that's what he's talking about. That's the more biblical. There's enmity now between man and woman, and
the male and the
man is ruling over woman now.
Yes.
Which kind of brings in, I guess, from the Urantia story, it's not that Adam was ever ruling over Eve. However, because they did not show an example to the world and integrate correctly and build the spiritual and material culture that was going to last many generations, Adam and Eve would have taught primitive humanity how to work together, masculine and feminine, but that did not fully get passed on, which did sort of contribute to the natural enmity between man and woman in the primitive tribes, which, at that point in time, men were still relatively ruling over women just because of the physical, strength power that they had. So, in a way, you are correct, but I guess in terms of the Urantia story and the actual quote of the enmity, it was a little bit more talking about the enmity between the Nodites and the Adamites.
The Anunnaki versus Adam and Eve.
Gonna be a good movie. So I believe, Taylor, you're still reading?
Yeah. Okay. Let's see, where was I at here? I think it was at 6.
6? Yeah.
Future course of action. Yeah, okay. Here we go. The consequences of the follies of misguided parents are so often shared by their innocent children.
Ooh.
The upright and noble sons and daughters of Adam and Eve were overwhelmed by the inexplicable sorrow of the unbelievable tragedy which had so suddenly and so ruthlessly thrust upon them. Not in 50 years did the older of these children recover from the sorrow and sadness of those tragic days, especially the terror of that period of 30 days during which their father was absent from home, while their distracted mother was in complete ignorance of his whereabouts or fate. And those same 30 days were as long years of sorrow and suffering to Eve. Never did this noble soul fully recover from the effects of that excruciating period of mental suffering and spiritual sorrow. No feature of their subsequent deprivations and material hardships ever began to compare in Eve's memory with those terrible days and awful nights of loneliness and unbearable uncertainty. She learned of the rash act of Sarapotesia and did not know whether her mate had in sorrow destroyed himself or had been removed from the world in retribution for her misstep. And when Adam
Taylor,
returned...
I'm sorry, I think we already read that. I think that's what I read, because at the end of this part, it says,
you're right.
time passed, but Adam was not certain of the nature of their offense until 70 days. The
And the
Melchizedek receivers.
enmity quote. So we were
Yeah,
actually
yeah,
on
so-
section
high-pitched noise?
6. Yeah, I heard that.
Keep
What
talking,
was that?
Magma.
I hear that. I don't know
Someone-
what that is. It's
Is it someone in your background?
it's something in here.
All right, it's
All
good.
right.
I'll keep reading and yeah, maybe you can find it.
Yeah, you're on 6.
Okay,
Adam
yeah,
and Eve
section
leave the garden.
6. Did I start this section yet? I guess I didn't.
No, we went on kind of a rant there.
Got
on a
it.
tangent.
Okay. Adam and Eve leave the garden. When Adam learned that the Nodites were on the march, he sought the counsels of the Melchizedeks, but they refused to advise him, only telling him to do as he thought best and promising their friendly cooperation as far as possible in any course he might decide upon. The Melchizedeks had been forbidden to interfere with the personal plans of Adam and Eve. Adam knew that he and Eve had failed. The presence of the Melchizedek receivers told him that, though he still knew nothing of their personal status or future fate. He held an all-night conference with some 1,200 loyal followers who pledged themselves to follow their leader. And the next day at noon, these pilgrims went forth from Eden in quest of new homes. Adam had no liking for war and accordingly elected to leave the first garden to the Nodites unopposed. The Edenic caravan was halted on the 3rd day from the garden by the arrival of the seraphic transports from Jerusalem. And for the first time, Adam and Eve were informed of what was to become of their children. While the transports stood by, those children who had arrived at the age of choice, 20 years, were given the option of remaining on Urantia with their parents or of becoming wards of the Most Highs of Norlashadek. 2/3 chose to go to Urantia, about 1/3 elected to remain with their parents. All children of pre-choice age were taken to Urantia. No one could have beheld the sorrowful parting of this material son and daughter and their children without realizing that the way of the transgressor is hard. These offspring of Adam and Eve are now on Urantia. We do not know what disposition is to be made of them. It was a sad, sad caravan that prepared to journey on. Could anything have been more tragic? To have come to a world in such high hopes, to have been so auspiciously received, and then to go forth in disgrace from Eden, only to lose more than 3/4 of their children even before finding a new abiding place. Sheesh.
That's harsh.
Also,
That's crazy. I mean,
that's rough, buddy.
UFOs. Just saying, it's in there. We just read it. they call them seraphic transports, but they're transporting the physical
Ooh.
material sons and daughters. So that ain't a spiritual UFO. That's a ship. They're gonna bring them to Urantia. I guess you could argue that they're translating them, but it doesn't specifically say that.
No, I like the UFO ship better. That one's
Egg-shaped UAPs?
There might be
funner in
another
my
quote
mind.
that talks about them being translated back to Urantia, but I don't know.
Oh yeah, a Urantia book reader would be like, since Adam and Eve materialized bodies when they landed, they
They
dematerialized
dematerialized.
in Seraphim over there. And
Beam
they
me up,
gained a
Scotty.
Urantia body. Fuck that UFO. The ships. They actually had ships, dog. You prove to me. No. What's crazy is that I don't know. I'm kind of calling out their kids, the kids that were above 20 years and decided to go back to Urantia, calling them pussies, dude. Calling them little pussies. I'm only calling them that because they were scared. They're giving into fear, you know? The entire universe says we have to do it this way, and my parents rebelled. No, I'm going to go back to the good guys, you know? I'm going to associate myself with the universals who are on the right side, who are accusing my parents. So they, you know, kind of ran away from their parents because they were afraid they'd be associated with the negative. One, if they would have stuck out on the planet, they would have gained adjusters and started the ascension process like regular mortals and had a great fucking career. They were scared. Fucking pussies. And put Adam and Eve through more hardship and sorrow by saying, we're leaving you guys. And I guarantee you, these were the people who, you know, hold their Bibles close. Like, no, we're going to go over here to the church. Same type of mentality. But the ones who stayed were like, nah, dog, we here for the long run. We got you. And we'll do the ascension progress with you. Don't trip. I'm sure I'm sure Adam and Eve and their kids, or they taught their kids the possibilities of what's going to happen. Like, look, this is what's going to happen. You can stay here. You'll probably gain an adjuster and you'll probably ascend with the normal mortals, which is dope because then you'll be in the finality core, all this shit. They were like, oh, that's sick. The other ones don't want to hear that shit. Nope. You've already rebelled. We're just going to go back to Urantia and be good little Adam and Eves. You know, that's how I'm taking it.
Yeah. No, I mean, I feel like it's probably just because they don't have that perspective, because they didn't arrive with Adam and Eve with a pre-existence being like, I want to make this planet better. They were born here. It was a hard life, although it was pretty stable for a while. And now suddenly all the stability was taken out. They knew that like everything would change, and they were given an offer to go to a wholly different planet. I wonder if they were excited about that. If they were like, okay, tell me about Urantia. Like, I've learned a little bit from Adam and Eve.
I've only heard about it
Like,
before.
they got to make a choice. Like, stay on this savage planet or go to Urantia. I mean, honestly, there is an appeal there if you don't have,
You're right.
you know, they don't have that, you know, like I said, they don't have that like idea or that mission. And it's kind of like, it's almost like, okay, it's like the immigrants who want to make it from a really hard life in Mexico to the United States because there's better opportunities, and they're not. It's almost like we're arguing that, like, well, some of them need to just stay there and suck it up so they can make it a better place. Where it's like sometimes it's just so difficult that you go to a new place and call that your home now. So I see that side to it. But yeah, I mean, it's more of like props to the 1/3 that did chose to stay, because that did suggest a type of bravery and mission-oriented ideas or ideal that they were able to sort of think through and really make that supreme decision. So that's certainly noble.
That was a good point, though, Taylor.
And this is bringing another thought to my mind. When Adam and Eve have kids, are they pulling Adam and Eve's souls into incarnation? Or are these like legit new souls in Adam and Eve bodies?
I think they're new souls. That's a good question.
It never suggested that they were pulling them from Jerusalem. Because
they're
they already had like
they're
100
just
kids
normal
on
kids.
Jerusalem.
So they're just raised like an earth human, but they have purple bodies. So they don't really know much about the cosmic hierarchy. Okay, that's pretty
But
gnarly.
maybe because they're still so close to the Adamic like spiritual body or
machine.
something. They're almost as if they had direct children on Adentia, I guess, and that's why they had that opportunity to go back.
Wait, what do you mean?
Because the kids had that opportunity to go back to Adentia.
But yeah, it's like,
I'm
why would they
thinking,
even give them the opportunity? Is kind of like what you're
yeah,
thinking.
Yeah,
To
if they
take some of the
weren't, yeah,
kids.
you're right. Because they were biologically Adam and
Adamic,
Eve.
yeah.
They couldn't. They were liabilities, maybe. But they
Oh,
let.
yeah.
It was a choice, I guess.
maybe I'm just saying maybe it's like the status of their energy body or whatever. Like they were almost as if Adam and Eve had directly had kids on Adentia. You know that they were
Okay,
almost
you're
like,
right. Because it's only one generation.
yeah, it's like
Okay,
barely
let's give them the
removed.
choice.
So,
If they choose
yeah.
to self-deport, they'll self-deport like Trump. Like Trump got the self-deportation things. That's crazy.
I wonder if any of the kids got assigned to other planetary missions. That'd be crazy.
Ooh,
They go back to Udentia, but then they get sent out, on another mission as volunteers. I
yeah, I
mean,
want to know about that.
It's true. It says they're on Edentia. We don't know what the disposition is to be made of them. We know Adam and Eve are still on the council on 4 and 20. So I'm guessing their kids would have to wait until they reached Edentia back in order to get released for service, because they're kind of waiting for their parents to hit that universe level again. So I
maybe,
don't
but
think
I don't
Adam and
know.
Eve
I
are
don't know
there
why
yet.
there would be it's like my parents don't change my ascension career. I don't have to like wait for them.
No, I'm talking about. So it says like 2/3 of the years of age of choice, but there was a lot of people that weren't at that 20-year age of choice.
Oh, so you're talking about, did
And they
those
got
pre-choice
automatically
ones
taken
have to
off.
wait for Adam and Eve's fate or something?
Yeah. And it's kind of like, when like a kid dies on Earth a little bit early and you have to wait for your father or mother to be repersonalized before you wake up and continue your ascension process.
Yeah.
They hold you in like stasis. I don't know. Keep it rolling. Who is it? Is it me?
Degradation of Adam and Eve. Yeah, that's
So now where are we at here? So we are 2 hours and 20 minutes in.
yeah.
Let's
We're
see.
almost to
How
the
much more
end.
time have we
7,
got?
8. There's 7. Yeah, 2 sections.
Yeah, we can
All right,
knock
let's
this
crank it
out.
up. The degradation of Adam and Eve. It was while the Edenic caravan was halted that Adam and Eve were informed of the nature of their transgressions and advised concerning their fate. So they were moving to the second garden in a big caravan, took a break for some water and food, and then fucking Gabriel just boom, blast, appears over. Oh shit! In the middle of the woods, flaming angel. Gabriel appeared to pronounce judgment. And this was the verdict. The planetary Adam and Eve of Urantia are adjudged in default. They have violated the covenant of their trusteeship as the rulers of this inhabited world. While downcast by the sense of guilt, Adam and Eve were greatly cheered by the announcement that their judges on Solvington had absolved them from all charges of standing in contempt of the universe government. They had not been found guilty of rebellion, so they were stoked. They're like, yes, we good. The Edenic pair were informed that they had degraded themselves to the status of mortals of the realm, that they must henceforth conduct themselves as man and woman of Urantia, looking to the future of the world races for their future. Long before Adam and Eve left Jerusalem, their instructors had fully explained to them the consequences of any vital departure from the divine plans. I had personally and repeatedly warned them, both before and after they arrived on Urantia, that reduction to the status of mortal flesh would be the certain result, the sure penalty which would unfailingly attend default in the execution of their planetary mission. But a comprehension of the immortality status of the material order of sonship is essential to a clear understanding of the consequences attendant upon the default of Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve, like their fellows on Jerusalem, maintained immortal status through intellectual association with the mind gravity circuit of the spirit. Hold up. There's a little secret to immortality.
Yeah, I remember we talked about this once before.
Yeah.
This was one of the
that
reasons.
maybe what is that perhaps what the tree of life keeps you integrated with the mind gravity circuit of the spirit?
I
What if
don't
the
think
tree of
so.
life
I
played a
think
role in it?
because if we read this full paragraph, the breaking of that mind gravity circuit had nothing to do with the tree of life.
Okay, that was just because they were from Urantia. They were Adam and Eve's like material sons and daughters, I guess.
You'd say they're closer to the spiritual circuits. They're more connected. Humans can still get connected, but they were being from
Already
Jerusalem. They were much more
I would
connected.
say that they have
Okay.
perfect thoughts. Every
Yeah.
thought form that generated in their mind was harmonious to the universe. And then they started thinking of, those evil thoughts, I guess, quote unquote. And that's what automatically separated them.
By mental disjunction. Okay. Vital sustenance broken by mental disjunction. Then
And that's
regardless,
what it says. Like, remember when it talks about like the gas chambers in their mind that they could like oscillate telepathic
Yeah. They lost that.
forms, but it says that was cut off the second they started harboring mental discord or something like that.
yeah. Okay.
When this vital sustenance is broken by mental disjunction, then, regardless of the spiritual level of creature existence, immortality status is lost. Hugh Thoth and Drunvalo's meditation immortality breathwork techniques.
Yeah.
Mortal status followed by physical dissolution was the inevitable consequence of the intellectual default of Adam and Eve. Number 2. The material son and daughter of Urantia, being also personalized in the similitude of the mortal flesh of this world, were further dependent on the maintenance of a dual circulatory system, the one derived from their physical natures, the other from the super energy stored in the fruit of the tree of life. Always had the archangel custodian admonished Adam and Eve that default of trust would culminate in degradation of status, and access to this source of energy was denied them subsequent to their default. Well.
Wow.
Okay, so the fruit didn't stop working for them because they thought bad thoughts. It was revoked from them by the angels because
I think
they
the fruit
thought
still
bad
would have
thoughts.
worked for them, actually.
It still would have worked. I believe that too. Now
Because
reading
it
the
worked
sentence,
for Van. There is when it talks about Van using it and Abaddon using it for 150,000 years. I think it only says. I remember it said one thing. It was both the fruit and the assistance of the Melchizedeks that kept them alive for 150,000 years. But it makes it sound like they could have used the fruit to keep living.
Okay, so if you can achieve this mental immortality through perfect thoughts, that allows you access to use the fruit, that allows the fruit to work for you, right? Is that
I don't think that thing is necessary for the fruit to work. For the fruit to work, it's actually just their body DNA encoding. They had to be encoded to be able to take the space energies the potent space energies that the fruit like contained. Yeah. I mean, that's why they were separated from the fruit of the tree of life, because it still would have worked for them, even though they were in rebellion now.
Because I was going to say, didn't they bring the tree with them? That was one of the things they took from the garden when they left to establish a second garden. I believe they took the tree of life with them, didn't they?
They did. You're right.
And why would they if it didn't work anymore? Unless it was just like such a valuable relic to have or something. But this says their dual circulatory system, one derived from their physical nature, the other from the super energy stored in the fruit.
The second garden fell. Remember when the second garden fell, they overran it to try to steal the tree of life.
Okay.
Interesting. Okay, so you can achieve mental immortality status, which is, I'm guessing, the Drunvalo thing they're talking about. But only when you reach that is what dictates whether or not the angels will take away the fruit from you, because you can even hit discord mental status and still eat the fruit and stay alive. But the hierarchy of angels are going to dictate whether you get the fruit. So I guess what it comes down to is your mind. Yeah. If you don't hold those harmonious cosmic thought forms, the angels will take away the fruit.
Yeah, I mean, also in a sense, as human ascenders, once our thoughts get perfected to the point that they're so close to the adjusters, that is what we call fusion, and That's our gaining of immortality. So that
Mm.
kind of also connects with what it's saying about their mind gravity spirit connection, is like when you're so in tune with the thoughts of God, it sort of keeps it, even it vitalizes your physical health as well. And in fusion case, your physical body does not really survive that process. You kind of merge with spirit, that pure energy. But yeah, there's overlaps here in concepts.
Yeah, and I think I made a mistake. I don't think they brought the tree to the second garden. I was confusing the Anunnaki when the prince's staff got overran.
Yeah,
The local
they
tribes were
moved the
trying to eat
core,
the
or Van took the
Okay.
core and
Yeah.
kept and
Okay.
replanted
Okay.
it.
Yeah, so when they
Okay.
defaulted, Adam and Eve, the angels just straight up took it. They said no more.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it doesn't even tell us the
Wow.
fate of the tree, of what happened to it, or
No.
if it's still on Earth
Fucking
somewhere.
A. Give me some
Mm.
seeds, dog. Fuck. Not like it would work for us. I just wanted to have it on display. Like this is the
There's
tree.
a
Well,
fossil somewhere buried under the
it
sand.
would still be interesting to scientists, but
Dude.
yeah, it wouldn't, like, we couldn't gain immortality, but we could probably do a lot of other stuff with it. It's literally
Yeah.
a tree
Oh,
from
yeah,
another planet, from
It'd
a
make
celestial
breakthroughs
planet.
for like
We can make some. We can make a sick naked
biological
juice.
breakthroughs.
Naked juice from the tree of life, dude.
Wow. Have Eve up there putting like plants over her boobs just to remind you. Calagastia did succeed in trapping Adam and Eve, but he did not accomplish his purpose of leading them into open rebellion against the universe government.
Oh,
What
he
they had
tried.
done was indeed evil, but they were never guilty of contempt for truth. Neither did they knowingly enlist in rebellion against the righteous rule of the universal Father and his Creator's Son.
Oh, okay. So I'll go ahead and finish this off. But one thing I wanted to say, when it's talking about the default of Adam and Eve, they defaulted. Uh, I know what defaulting is because I had actually years ago defaulted on a student loan. I just stopped paying it, and after a while, getting calls from debt collectors, I finally uh went through a recovery program to resolve that default status and just get back into paying it. So that's basically what that means, is if you've defaulted, you still have the opportunity of going through kind of a recovery and getting out of that status. So it's not necessarily a permanent status, it's just your current standing. And then something else I gotta show here. Um, let's see. I've showed this before, but I'll show it again for this episode. Because we're talking about the Tree of Life. This is all over the world in ancient inscriptions and carvings. This depiction of two beings facing a tree of life. This one here pictured is an
That's
Egyptian one.
Egyptian.
Yeah, you can see that sun symbol we saw at the Unity
You think the
Village.
Egyptians had the tree this whole time? Maybe that's what's
I
under the
wonder.
pyramids.
That's what's under the pyramid, dude. What if?
That'd be trippy. Some seeds.
There's all these ancient depictions, and they're all really mysterious. This looks like Assyrian because you got those lions with the human heads and the wings. There's one from UB the News. All these different depictions, they're very mysterious. From cultures all over the world. This was from the Palace of Nimrod, which we were talking about earlier. This was actually from the temple Isis destroyed in 2015. Really cool depiction though. This I just found out about this. This was in China. I forget the name of the culture. But I went down a whole rabbit hole. There was this very artistically elaborate culture in ancient China. I want to say it was like 500 BC or something. They made this tremendous brass
What was
statue
the name
with
of that
3
culture? Do you
pillars.
know? Not the Hurrian Society, is it?
I can find it real quick. Actually, I found it, Tree of Life, on Wikipedia. This is freaking cool. I just learned about this. The Sunzingdui. Dude, look at this artwork.
All right. Well,
These
you're going so
people.
fast. Go. Where is it exactly located? Because
Oh,
there's a place where I found out. Oh yeah, okay. That's not far at all from.
Guangchang.
Yeah,
Oh, from like the desert.
yeah. The
Oh,
Taklamakan Basin in the desert where the Melchizedek missionaries broke into China.
Whoa, interesting.
along the Silk Road, and a lot of the Melchizedek teachings got to China. And in that area, you can find what they call Greco-Buddhist artistic depictions, and that's a weird word. No one ever connects the Greek and the Buddhist culture, but they have like
Wow.
light skinned white people. They depict seraphim and angels, but it's a Chinese style. Fucking weird.
Yeah, check this one out. This one consists of 3 levels. The bottom level is a circular base bearing a pair of fabulous animals. On the second level are 4 standing human figures supporting hills on their heads. The top level is a 4-sided structure adorned with human figures and human-headed birds. The 3 levels probably represent vertical order of man, earth, and heaven. Yeah, these people were artistically just
Could be.
masters.
It'd be descendants of like, yeah, some type of celestial.
It does call it the shrub of Edentia. Shrub. So
The
that
shrub of
depiction is a
Urantia.
little more shrubbery than tree.
Yeah, then a tree. Yeah.
Yeah, I just had to show that, but it's interesting that this was like a carpet in Iran. This was so one thing I want to point out here. This is another symbol I learned about. It's opposing animals, which was a very ancient motif of 2 animals opposing each other. And here the animals are running up on the tree of life and destroying it. Is supposedly what that would represent whenever you see 2 opposing animals. They're making an effort to destroy something. I wonder what the symbolism is here. Like ancient mankind were like animals destroying the tree of life or something. And usually you'll see a human figure in the middle holding the 2 animals back, and that's where the ancient depiction of like Nimrod being the master of animals came from. Um, and then this is another Chinese tree of life. Uh, that is the Ministry of Culture and Tourism in Turkey, and that is actually a tree of life logo.
Wow,
Uh,
in Turkey,
yeah,
where
in
a bunch
Turkey.
of Adamic outposts are. Yeah.
And that's where a lot of these kind of inscriptions are found too. This was also that temple that got destroyed. Uh, this was actually found in Mexico, and it represents the same symbolism where you see birds all over the tree of life, and the birds are supposed to represent souls. But yeah, very interesting. I just had to show that it's found all over the world. That's Urartu right there. And it shows that symbolism of the tree of life and these like 2 angelic beings next to it, or 2 other figures, is just rampant throughout ancient cultures across the world. So that's been preserved. I thought that was totally awesome.
Multiple
But
cultures all across the world. They know the truth, baby.
yeah,
Or there is nuggets of cryptic truth that have been lost to history embedded within those texts. And that's why you come to this YouTube channel. So we can dig out of a bunch of that bullshit, reach in, grab that shiny opal, hold it up to the light, Indiana
mhm.
Jones style. A map will get projected through the crystal on the back, and we'll say, look, and it'll be live streamed to you. And that's what you're doing right now. That was just a creative mental depiction of what's happening right now.
Mhm.
So, who's
So
are you finishing it out?
yeah,
Take it.
I'll finish this up.
Oh no, Magma.
8. The so-called fall of man. Adam and Eve did fall from their high estate of material sonship down to the lowly status of mortal man. But that was not the fall of man. The human race has been uplifted despite the immediate consequences of the Adamic default. Although the divine plan of giving the violet race to the Urantia peoples miscarried, the mortal races have profited enormously from the limited contribution which Adam and his descendants made to the Urantia races. There has been no fall of man. The history of the human race is one of progressive evolution, and the Adamic bestowal left the world peoples greatly improved over their previous biologic condition. The more superior stocks of Urantia now contain inheritance factors derived from as many as 4 separate sources: Andinite, Sangic, Nodite, and Adamic. Adam should not be regarded as the cause of a curse on the human race. While he did fail in carrying forward the divine plan, while he did transgress his covenant with deity, while he and his mate were most certainly degraded in creature status, notwithstanding all this, their contribution to the human race did much to advance civilization on Urantia. In estimating the results of the Adamic mission on your world, justice demands the recognition of the condition of the planet. Adam was confronted with a well-nigh hopeless task when, with his beautiful mate, he was transported from Jerusalem to this dark and confused planet. But they had been guided by the counsel of the Melchizedeks and their associates, and had they been more patient, they would have eventually met with success. But Eve listened to the insidious propaganda of personal liberty and planetary freedom of action. She was led to experiment with the life plasm of the material order of sonship, in that she allowed this life trust become prematurely commingled with that of the then mixed order of the original design of the life carriers, which had been previously combined with that of the reproducing beings once attached to the staff of the planetary prince. Never in all your ascent to paradise will you gain anything by impatiently attempting to circumvent the established and divine plan by shortcuts, personal inventions, or other devices for improving on the way of perfection to perfection and for eternal perfection. All in all, there probably never was a more
Jake, you're muted.
disheartening
God damn
miscarriage.
it. Sorry. Can you pause for a second? I was muted. I didn't even notice. Fuck.
Oh, you were saying something?
Yeah.
Good
This
catch.
motherfucker's just ignoring me. No. That this is the last paragraph you read. I think that's a really important paragraph in the Urantia book.
Mm.
It highlights like no personal invention, shortcuts, or other devices for improving the way of your perfection to perfection for eternal perfection. Nothing's gonna work. Like it's like even if we created an anti-gravity UFO right now, that's not gonna give you a shortcut to paradise. You still have to go through spiritual qualifications and mental qualifications, you know? So like no matter on your entire ascent to paradise, like everybody in society thinks that like we can advance through technological means, and that means we're an advanced species because we have computers that process fast. We have AI. We can create anti-gravity. It doesn't fucking matter if you create all that shit. It's not going to get you to learn the lessons you need to reach the universal father. So it's nice that you can invent all these things, all these trinkets, all these different shortcuts, manipulations. That's you kind of what putting off and procrastinating from learning the
Yeah.
actual cosmic lessons. So
That's a really good point. That kind of brings to mind like the space race and this pursuit of always establishing a new frontier, even though we have major problems we still need to solve here at home.
yeah,
And I think this idea of like taking shortcuts could really be interpreted probably perfectly in the Labor Party revolution in Russia before the Communist Party took over, because it was this idea like we're going to take a shortcut, overthrow the entire state, but they were still relying on a state to solve all their problems for them. And I think that's why communism always fails, because you're still relying on this state to take care of you. We do the same thing with corporations, with the government, with any large institution. When we overly depend on it to take care of us, we're in trouble. And nowadays we enjoy the luxuries of modern living, but if something catastrophic were to happen to our electrical infrastructure, we'd be screwed. So uh, the Urantia book iterates over and over. Take things slowly and carefully. You never want to rush into something and become overly dependent on a fragile plan, because, you know, God's eternal. He's got all the time in the world. So we can take our time and do things the right way.
yeah, no shortcuts. It's like just inventing a quick company and selling it for way more than what it's worth to become a quick billionaire, like in crypto, like a pump and dump, you know? That's a quick
Yeah, yeah.
shortcut. And you're making a lot of money. So now, oh wow, I'm good materialistically wise, but that's a shortcut because you fucked everybody over, you know? And now you're not spiritually qualified to even have that amount of money. Now people are looking at you as a leadership role, but you're not qualified to lead them because you took a shortcut to gain all this material wealth and you actually manipulated other people, stole from them. That's what business and capitalism is nowadays. You're stealing and manipulating from people. Can I get another 2% out of Frank? They're stupid. They don't know over at Capital Investments. We'll tell them this and get another 5% of interest over 6 years. You know, all these
Exactly.
shortcuts for manipulations. On top of that, uh, getting the money and then just walking around and going up to a super hot chick and you're like, hey, look at my bank account. Boom. Now she's with you. Now she's at my side. And in external reality, I'm killing it. I have a hot chick next to me. But you short circuited, use the money to get her next to you. She is decroded and rotting on the inside, but externally it looks good. You're a good, successful guy and you have a pretty girl next to you. But you shortcutted this entire system, you know? Like those are the kind of things I'm talking about. people thinking that all these material shortcuts for material gains is indicative of mind, body, spirit, or spiritual progress when it's not. There is no shortcuts to this shit.
Man, that reminds me. Have y'all heard about the Sky Gyms lately? There's a company that had a franchise of these Sky Gyms where you can take your kids to go ride on zip lines and stuff. And this company decided to expand too fast and cut corners. They would have on these
Uh-oh.
Sky Gyms,
Got
like
cheap
two.
carabiners, cheap ropes.
Yes. They would have 2 staff members to buckle up the kid and guide them safely. They said, "You know, we don't need 2 people. Let's just have 1." So what you have is
Oh,
you're
dude,
hiring
that's the
these.
entire thing about climbing. You need redundancy, or if,
Yes.
dude, fuck.
Yeah, so they have these. They're hiring these 16-year-olds who don't
No.
care about their job. They're like, "Oh, it's just a stupid job." Rushing
Oh,
families through it. Kids are getting permanent disabilities, getting hurt left and right. It's pretty
jeez.
dang bad. So now this company's facing a onslaught of lawsuits, and it was because they're franchising and they're expanding too fast and cutting corners for profit.
Shortcuts. Yep.
So that is what this paragraph is talking about. Don't do that.
Yeah, like the big corporations that are like, we have a bunch of waste product that causes autism, but we don't know what to do with it. You know, let's pay off this governor to let us dump it in the river.
Mm,
We're good. Boom. You know, we covered our back. It's a shortcut. Now everybody's fucked.
yep. So
Hey, Chilla, you got anything about shortcuts? What's up? What's your experience?
I guess this quote reminds me of, there's another quote that talks about like no amount of cleverness can substitute for I feel like we should pull that up
Ooh.
because that kind of
Yeah,
it really
yeah.
kind of explains this. Let me look,
What up?
search for cleverness.
Spiritual capacity. That's from the first.
Oh, there's Urantia Moda, maybe.
Urantia Moda.
Yeah, there's one. Here's one.
I
A
think it's one of the
display
modas.
of specialized skill does not signify possession of spiritual capacity. Cleverness is not a substitute for true character.
Amen.
Mhm.
Amen. Write it on your chest right now if you're listening to this. Fuck yeah.
Can't cheat spirituality.
Nah, bro. That's why we're not, like, when you watch this channel, a lot, because there's so many grifters out there. Like, are these guys legit? Are these guys just grifters? Or
How to ascend in
made it,
7
people.
steps.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Fucking it. The secrets. No, but I know it sounds crazy, but you stumbled into Shangri-La. You found it. Welcome. No, we're not out here like trying to grift and manipulate for shortcuts. Fuck that. You actually have to be about it. That's part of the entire thing.
Got to put in the work.
You got to be genuine about it. So I hope you can hear it in the sincerity that we all take. Good point, Tachila. You still got more or no?
Yeah, we're almost done here.
I don't
Sorry.
think so. I mean, I guess I would say is that, yeah, a lot of the modern popular spirituality is like some of it plays on like that matrix angle where it's like we're just in the matrix. Some of it gets loose on ideas about who is God. They try and tell you that you are God, which is like it's a clever mental workaround trying to convince you that because your mind is from God or because you have a divine fragment, it means you are God. And they're trying to use it for things like you need to respect yourself more because you are divine. It's like an overall principle. Sometimes it's trying to be encouraging. Other times it's just trying to be clever, where it's like a technical argument to try and explain how you are from God and how you are God, is where it's like none of those clever like things substitutes for like clearing up the distortions of the religion that you were raised with by like really thinking about these concepts, looking at the different ideas, taking a gander at some revelation and weighing it against your previous concepts. And there's really no like shortcut to unraveling your own psyche and knowing yourself. And also, I think specifically this applies a lot to so much of our spirituality is actually how we interact with other people. Spirituality is almost
seriously.
It's almost useless in the context of isolation, meaning that like if we were isolated or if you lived a whole life in isolation alone on a planet, it's almost like spirituality would almost have no ability to like really, you wouldn't how can you live spiritually when you're alone and you're not interacting with other humans? Think about like all the worst strife in your life comes from the strife you have with other men, women, other humans on the planet. That's where all the anguish comes from. That's why some people, they want to go in nature and they want to go Henry David Thoreau and live alone in the wilderness, because it does take you momentarily out of the strife matrix. But it's also not the ultimate spiritual path either, doing a self-isolation, meditating alone in the wilderness. You might be able to have some psychic experiences by doing some celibate yogi journey where you only are alone and you're trying to know yourself. There could be some there could be some learning that comes from that. You know, do a silent meditation retreat. That's cool. Learn how to manage your thoughts. Realize how loud that internal monologue is running all the time. But at the end of the day, I think most of your spirituality is proved through your social interaction with fellow mankind, and that is where that is specifically where it's like there's no shortcuts to true character in interacting with your fellow man. You might think that, like, instead of being fully honest with a brother, you could tell them a half truth, but then you can only tell so many half truths before they realize that you're like holding back, or their communication is always stunted, and then trust is lost. That's a shortcut, you know. True communication, absolving problems, it takes a character trait to really like put it out all on the table and resolve things. And I think all of our inner kind of irresolution or discontentment, it can also be absolved through our interaction with other people. We learn that the guilt that we put on ourselves for our actions, we can unravel that by doing better with other people, I guess you could say. That's kind of abstract. I mean, I guess a lot of personal problems and guilt about our past, some of that comes from the way that we've chosen to interact with people in the past. But the only way to get over that is to actually change that character trait and start interacting with people differently. To, you know, they talk about how, I guess in like therapy and stuff, it's like, okay, how do you resolve with the issues you've had with people in the past? Like, that always lives with you if you can't resolve it. And if you can't resolve it with them, like say they're dead, you can kind of resolve it in the way that you treat people like them, so that you make sure that charge does not continue to live through you. So that's kind of my take on this, you know, idea of there's no amount of shortcuts that can help you in your eternal perfection.
Hey, fucking man. Well put. Yeah. I like what you said about that like unresolved energies, and it happens a lot, especially when you're young. Like, I talk about it a lot when someone's a dick to you, when they're mean to you, you're really quick to get mad at them. Like, why is this guy a dick? But you have to realize that somebody probably treated them like that when they were young, and they didn't like it. So that stayed in them. And then the next time they've encountered a situation similar, they pulled that energy out and did it to someone else, because they thought they didn't like the way it felt to them. But now, for some reason, as humans, we like to make other people feel like the way we don't feel like. And now that's how it's not logically, but we control the situation in our minds when it's really a fucking illusion. It's a distortion. Why are we putting someone else in the feeling that we didn't like to feel? But we're only doing that so we can feel like the master energy of it, so that we can try to feel good about ourselves. It's a fucking weird way to use a distortion. And those are just unresolved energies that happened in your past. And yeah, if that person died, then you're going to have to resolve the energy through other people you encounter on the journey along the path that are similar to them, but you apply that same frame to that situation. I hope you guys are listening right now, because we're going deep into your own spiritual progress on planet Earth. So, like, when that happens, just know that, okay, these feelings are bubbling up. They're strong. I'm getting angry. I'm getting scared. I kind of want to leave. I don't want to deal with this person. I just want to maybe like yell or say something mean. That's unresolved energy. Take a breath and realize you can take a step back into that divine spark, into the adjuster's point of view, and look at it. Look from the top down and be like, wow, look at my human self reacting. And then how can I resolve these energies? These energies are the blockages on my mind body spirit complex, and how can I integrate them? And you might look stupid. You might sweat. You might flub your words in that situation. You're not going to feel comfortable. But as long as you make the effort and the desire to, you know what, I am not going to let these energies dictate how I act in time and space. And even if I sound stupid and you blurt out, hey guys, I'm feeling like this, but I don't like it. And I just want to figure it out. That's better than holding it in and not figuring it out. And that's the first step to figuring it out. And after 5-10 times, you're a master and you look back and you're like, oh, wow. I remember when I didn't know how to overcome this energy. I overcame this energy. I'm a better person. And now I can help other people who are going through this. You know, it's called resolving, clearing distortions. So
Yeah,
good way to bring that up, Tachila. And the last thing I want to riff off real quick was just that, like you said, cleverness is not a true substitute for character. Like I said before, this is why we created the channel. That's why we joke, we have fun, we like to be clever. But when you look at us in our eyes, I hope you can tell that we're not grifters. We're not just selling snake oil. This is when we wake up, we breathe shit, eat, and we're gonna eat and we're gonna die doing this shit.
we're
Because we
passionate
have to
about the
be
truth.
honest, passionate about the truth. We want to be honest to our true characters. I don't give a fuck what you guys think of me, dog. Want to know who I care? I care about what Jesus and Michael thinks of me because he's watching me every second. Period. I don't care if you think I'm clever or trying to sell you snake oil or not. I'm way beyond that, dog. If you're thinking about that, that's in your mind, and those are some distortions you got to figure out. I'll do my best to try to relieve you of that stress. But in my own mind, I cannot be a snake oil salesman. Not because I'm afraid you might find out, but because I'm reporting to someone who can see through my soul and personality who's up there, and I'm performing so that I can achieve a better spot in that cosmic organization. So there's no point in trying to lie and manipulate people, because the more I do that, the less I'll be able to get into that cosmic position. So just trying to give you some insight on how I'm thinking about this. Cleverness is not a substitute for character. You know what I'm
Amen.
saying?
Yeah. My
got
my
two
final
paragraphs
thought
here.
on my
Kill it.
final thought on the resolving of unresolved energies is feelings travel faster than words. So whenever
Yeah.
me and Lee are in a dispute, we're having a regular couples argument kind of thing. It's my immediate response is to go into that fight or flight, self-preservation survival mode where I'm just defending myself, even if I don't even have a valid argument. And then it
Mhm.
takes a tremendous amount of patience to kind of step away and with humility kind of evaluate, like see your problem from the other person's perspective. I believe this is why we have other human beings in the world, you know? Why we have to
Ooh.
deal with each other. Because we need other people to see us. It's like that one quote in that song, you'll never see yourself through someone else's eyes. You know, it's like
Mhm.
we need someone else's perspective to call us out on our bullshit. And
Yeah.
then we have to have the humility to accept I was wrong. Mark Passio actually says that is the most powerful words you can utter in the universe is I was wrong, because none of us
Yeah.
want to admit it. But that's why problems continue and amplify and get worse. So that's how you resolve that energy. You just got to step away, kind of admit your defeat in this one little instant so you don't create a whole snowball of defeat later on down the road. You know, you can smash that snowball right here before it gets
Yeah.
big.
Fuck yeah. I just think of Jocko Willink in my head right now. Oh, you were wrong? Or oh, I was wrong? Good.
Good. I love that, dude. That's so good.
Good. Now I have time to get better.
You
Good.
you should
Now
post
I
a link
learned.
to that. You should share a link to that in the chat
Dude.
if you can,
All
if you
right.
can pull it up. 'Cause
Yeah,
that was
put it in the
powerful.
description too. Right. I'll
Yeah, that
put it
was
in the
powerful.
description of the video too. Let's finish out this last two sentences, right? Or
All
last two
right.
paragraphs.
All in all, there probably never was a more disheartening miscarriage of wisdom on any planet in all Nibbidon. But it is not surprising that these missteps occur in the affairs of the evolutionary universes. We are a part of a gigantic creation, and it is not strange that everything does not work in perfection. Our universe was not created in perfection. Perfection is our eternal goal, not our origin. If this were a mechanistic universe, If the first great source and center were only a force and not also a personality, if all creation were a vast aggregation of physical matter dominated by precise laws characterized by unvarying energy actions, then might perfection obtain, even despite the incompleteness of universe status. There would be no disagreement, there would be no friction. But in our evolving universe of relative perfection and imperfection, we rejoice that disagreement and misunderstanding are possible.
Hell yeah.
For thereby is evidenced the fact and the act of personality in the universe. And if our creation is in existence dominated by personality, then can you be assured of possibilities of personality survival, advancement, and achievement? We can be
Yeah.
confident of personality growth, experience, and adventure. What a glorious universe, in that it is personal and progressive, not merely mechanical or even passively perfect. Presented by Solonia, Seraphic Voice in the Garden. Boom.
God damn.
That
Dude,
last paragraph was that
paragraph is
quote.
crazy,
Good.
dog. Yeah. Yeah.
Everything's falling apart. Good. It's an opportunity
That-
for us to get better.
Good. Good. That's crazy. That paragraph that honestly can be used or sent to anybody in order to like solve a lot of these mental mishaps that people are going in with their own mental philosophy that's a little bit distorted, you know? Like what if God is real, why isn't everything perfect, you know?
It's an
This is a
opportunity
great
for us to
paragraph
grow.
to send them. Exactly. It's an opportunity for us to grow. I love that they rejoice at the fact that you can disagree and that misunderstandings are possible.
They rejoice.
That's what I'm saying. I love it. I love it. And when people get into like disagreements in normal society, it's like it's really amped up because they're not used to confrontation. Like they don't know how to deal with it. So it gets like amped up and animalistic. But it should be regarded as like, I don't know, what do you want to eat today? I'm feeling this. Oh, well, I'm feeling this. Do I hate you because you want Italian food and I want tacos? Like, are we like blood fucking battle? No, it's not a big deal. Like, that's how we should look at any type of disagreements and misunderstandings. Like, it's going to happen. Multiple personalities in the universe with different points of view on a scale, on a spectrum, they're going to have different inputs and outputs. That's fine. Let's just talk about it. And we all have to genuinely want to get to the best place, the best end goal that helps the most amount of people along the way. That's it. That's all we have to do. And it's okay to have misunderstandings. And if you're honestly trying to get to the best end goal, you shouldn't have anything to be afraid of. It's just a fucking weird way we interact with each other down here.
Yeah. And like I was saying earlier, feelings travel faster than words. So it doesn't matter how you're trying to justify something or what intellectual gymnastics you're using in an argument. Your significant other is low-key psychic. They can see right through your bullshit. So it will only matter if you kind of change your attitude, you're not being passive aggressive about it, and you're trying to come to some kind of mutual understanding. So you got to embrace the friction, because that friction is what hardens us into a pearl.
Oh, some things harden me into a pearl. Zing. That was a sexual joke, people. Come on, guys. I guess that's it. Wrapping it up. You have something to say, Taylor? I thought I heard you.
I was just gonna just let it end on that sex joke.
Yeah, I was about to say, what a perfect ending, because Adam and Eve, the space freaks flying around planets, fucking them. That's a great job. When I die, I might sign up for it. I'll go. That sounds fun.
Sign me up.
No, but sign me up, dog. That sounds great. No, but it's all my blue bookers out there, Urantia book readers, Christians, Islam, Judeos, Jews. What's the right word? Hebrews? No, Hebrews doesn't say you belong to the Jewish race. Jewish. Well, how do you say Jews without sounding all crazy?
You just say Jews, I guess.
Yeah, right. That's a normal word. I don't know
think there's
why
a
people freak out when you say.
term.
No, right?
It's just because there's hot button world issues with
Semites.
people groups,
That's
and
it.
that's why.
Okay.
That's what everybody.
To
That's
all
what
the
people think
Semites
of.
out there.
And all this, there you go. To all the Semites out there.
Sounds maybe a little
we
more
hope-
politically correct.
Yeah, it does. It does. We hope we shed some light on the topic. I had a lot of fun doing this. I know you guys had some fun doing this. Learned a little bit myself. This is great. We're gonna keep it going. We're gonna keep obviously picking up on different threads. We have the Thought Adjuster Divine Spark series that we're doing, and we're also doing the Adam and Eve series that we're doing. So keep it locked. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, the spirit just took a hold of me and told you you're gonna hit that subscribe button in the next couple seconds right now.
Boom. Oh, you predicted it. It's happening.
Damn, that's crazy. If that offended you, sorry. Fucking send me an email.
Dude, I gotta say, what you were doing there just reminded me. With the Jews is what Michael Scott was doing in The Office with the black guy. He's like, I don't want to say you're black. He's like, yeah, I'm black. He's like, but isn't that offensive? He's like, no, I'm black. It's like, but isn't that a bad word?
That's hilarious. Can we say that? Is that okay? Yeah, exactly. No, exactly. I know that clip you're talking about. That's a perfect good shit. Thanks for tuning along.
That was fun.
Do I gotta remind him about the shirts? I don't. Go buy a shirt.
Got it right in front of you, right here.
Profit. Yeah, he's wearing one. They'll be sick. Look fresh so that we can fucking, like I said, you buy a shirt and we sacrifice an Illuminati high priest. That is actually a doctrine that was instated by our very own Tay Chilla. So you can thank him for that. No, hit up the shirts, go check them out. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, leave a comment if you can. Talk shit. Go check out my music video. It's the last video I think we dropped on the channel besides the live streams. I love you guys. You guys are more than what you think you are. We're going to leave you with some motivational speeches right now. So I'll be real quick. Step it the fuck up, dude. It's nice that you're listening to this YouTube channel. It's nice that you're taking in all these mental concepts. But if you take in these mental concepts and don't fucking change the face of planet Earth, you're the problem. You're fucking up. We didn't create this YouTube channel just so that you could listen to us. We created this YouTube channel because we saw in reality that there was not enough personalities functioning in time and space in order to take the planet back from the rebellion. So that's why we created this channel. Because we want to activate personalities within the Matrix. You know, Kung Fu, like Neo. We were trying to activate people so that we can actually make this planet a fucking cosmic Garden of Eden within the local universe. We can do it, and we can show this is like a cosmic Big Brother, literally a reality TV show, and the angels are watching. Now imagine you watching a reality show. Nobody knows they're on the reality show, and it's just boring. Like no one's doing shit. They're just on their phone, like sitting there. This is boring. Then two guys realize, wait a second, dog. I think I saw some cameras around here. Oh my god, we're on a show. And then those two guys are going to be the most interesting to watch, right?
Yeah.
Let's extrapolate that on a cosmic scale. Hello, can you guys wake up and activate so the Celestials are like, oh fuck yeah, they're waking up. They're waking up. That's all I want. So if you're listening to this, go out in time and space. We know you're going to join the legacy, but in spirit, you're already part of the legacy, and go represent. Go fucking represent. You don't have to buy a shirt for that. Go represent. Mind, body, spirit, progress. The routine will be in your pocket soon. Coming at a black mirror near you. Black mirror phone screen, if you didn't make the connection. That's my 2 cents. Fucking stab him a couple times, guys.
All right. I'm going to share my screen. I got this video of an upside down staircase. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh my god!
I knew he was joking right away, but you got D-Bake for a sec.
You got me for a second, Alex. This motherfucker.
Listen up. Feel that inner fire, that flame burning within your solar plexus. And it's time to get motivated, get pumped up, get excited, because you are here to do the Father's will. And you're not alone. You have celestial agencies backing you to make this happen. Lucifer's got nothing. He's got this planet, a few little planets here and there. You got the entire cosmic government backing you. All we need is boots on the ground, and that's what we are. Me and you, we're here to make it happen.
Hell yeah. Good fucking mental image right there. Behind enemy lines, baby.
We're behind enemy lines. So realize when everything goes wrong, when everything falls apart, just like it did for Adam and Eve, the whole plan fell to shit. It's okay. We can pick up the pieces and we can innovate a new plan. We can reevaluate and we can keep moving forward. That's what we're doing.
Right on. So, call to action. I've just been kind of thinking about this whole Adam and Eve story and just wondering overall. Well, one, I want to congratulate you because you, as the viewer, are probably new to the whole revelation thing, reading different truth. I mean, the seeker is always reading different things. We're always looking for the best source. And the reason I'm congratulating you is that this planet has been deprived of any master source of truth. We've been totally in the dark with a lack of data. We've been cut off from the rest of the universe. Most people on this planet don't even know that there's literally aliens and other civilizations out there who are asking the same big questions about the meaning of the universe. And even that has been kept from us. But we just got some revelations on some interesting concepts there. And yeah, like I said, I'm congratulating you because you were on Earth, a place deprived, a place in rebellion, and yet you're watching this video, which means you're looking for truth. And you probably have been for many years now. So I want to congratulate you for already making the decision to want to know what is reality, what is objective truth, what is the divine plan, because that's what I want to tie in here with the Adam and Eve story. Adam and Eve knew about the divine plan, and because this place was so dark and in rebellion, they got so discouraged that they chose to not use the divine plan, and that had a lot of personal consequences for them. Now, we do not have the same status as Adam and Eve. We didn't come from Jerusalem. We didn't come from an afterlife planet with pre-knowledge of what the divine plan is. We are the native mortal species. Our inheritance is the animal body, which has all of its challenges that we are meant to overcome. And so that's, I guess, the call to action is knowing our place, knowing our destiny, or our origin did not start out perfect. Try and upgrade your view of the Genesis story. It wasn't a perfect utopia. There was a lot of things wrong. And that is evidenced just by the fact that Satan, Lucifer, the rebellious angels were already here doing things, messing things up. Already in the beginning story, they're exerting influence. So remember, there's a lot of influences being exerted here. And there's the divine plan, and then there's the relative evil fantasy plans of kind of doing it in a way that is out of accordance with the universe, out of harmony. And remember that evil doesn't always start as conscious sin, conscious wrongdoing. Sometimes it's just like you think you're going to implement something revolutionary or new. But remember, when it comes to spirituality and the way we interact with people, you don't just you don't invent something revolutionary and new and clever to deal with people. It's just hard. It's difficult because it takes true character development. Development. And that's what it takes to actually progress and get better working with other people, to create a joyous experience, learn how to work with other people so you can build teams like we're doing here at The Legacy. Yeah, so that's kind of my thing, is just think about that, the divine plan and the relative matrix, which has been sort of given to you, and that there's so many opportunities. Remember that we didn't start perfect, but we can get there. We're going there, and that's the goal. So don't get caught up in too much of the guilt, but also, take that mentality that there is a real fight for your future, meaning that you have to choose every day to go for eternal concepts. You have to reach out to your divine fragment within and say, I need you to show me how to think about this situation, because if I'm left to my own devices, my reactions are basically pre-programmed. I'm just going to do the same thing that everyone else is doing. And we know where that has gotten the world because we look around us. So that's my call to action for everyone. Thanks for tuning in on this episode, trying to understand the cosmic betrayal of Adam and Eve and what Genesis didn't tell you.
Hell yeah, baby.
Amen to that.
Turns up on a Sunday. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Catch us next Sunday. Don't forget to say thank you to Salonia. Thank you, Salonia, for being there and giving us this paper. Don't forget to thank your angels. And hit us up. You guys want us to read or talk about any subjects, go join the Discord channel. Love you guys.